Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack and Zach are here once again, and tonight we're joined by the legend himself, Demeron Ashton. Demeron, how are you tonight?
Doing good. Glad to be on. Thank you.
Love it. What part of the world are you calling from tonight?
I'm calling from my shop here in Tremonton, Utah. It's northern Utah, close to the Idaho border.
Nice. Love Tremonton. Well, good. Well, Demeron told us tonight that he is our number one fan. Sorry, Andrew Bonin. You've been superseded. Demeron's listened to every one of these podcasts, some of them multiple times. And so we're really excited to catch up with him and hear his experience from Scotland. So let's just start off with your experience prior to getting your call and then your reaction going to Scotland.
Cool. All right. Well, growing up, I grew up in the church. Ever since I was a little kid, I had, pictures of missionaries with Doctrine and Covenants 4 underneath, and I wore the future missionary badge in primary, all that good stuff. I was born in Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa.
Okay.
And so I was in the mission field. My dad worked for a slaughterhouse, and he was trying to work his way up the ranks. And so we moved a little bit. I've lived in Amarillo, Texas for a little bit, and then we moved to Holcomb, Kansas, which is close to Garden City on the west side of Kansas. So I had a little bit of experience with missionaries coming over for dinner and sharing lessons and messages with us and things, but moved to Cache Valley when I was about 12 and never really saw the missionaries again. So it's interesting growing up in Utah. And, I thought about that a lot. Because like a lot of the English missionaries or missionaries from different parts of the United States or the world, they have missionaries that are in their ward all the time that they get an example from, and they get to see how missionaries work. And coming from Utah, I didn't really get to see that. So it was interesting for me to go on a mission and see what missionary work is like, having not had time with the missionaries a lot. But when I was 12, I had a pretty influential leader in the young men's who later became my bishop when I was 12 years old in deacons. And he says, if you could serve a mission anywhere in the world, where would you pick? And you won't believe what I said. I said, Hawaii.
I love it.
I said, I don't think I'll ever have a chance to go to Hawaii, and it'd be fun to get a little grass skirt. And he was like, come on, Demeron, be serious. I'm asking you a serious question. Where do you want to go on a mission? And so I thought for a little bit, and I said, I'd like to go to Scotland. And he's like, any particular reason why? And I said, so I could get a kilt. So imagine the surprise I had when I opened my mission call and it said Scotland. My mind went right back to that time. And I was like, holy cow, someone must have been listening when I said that.
God, no kidding. That's so cool. Love
it.
I love
had to go somewhere where you could get a skirt.
That's right. I did get one too, of course. So my parents, they trained me up to be a missionary when I was 13 years old. Both my grandparents and some aunts and uncles have farms. And so I was 13 years old, and they're like, you're going every summer to work for your uncle. So I milked cows every summer. The week that school was out, I was milking cows, changing water, feeding cows, doing tractor work. Up at 4 o'clock in the morning, not going to bed till 11 o'clock. Sometimes I'd have to wake up in the middle of the night to change gated pipe on corn. And so I learned what hard work was and the value of hard work. Plus, they said that I had to pay for my mission, so that helped pay for my mission. And that was good. I was never homesick, really. I love my parents and my family, don't get me wrong, but, I never was really homesick because I'd spent plenty of time away from my family from working summers. Ended up milking cows for someone in my ward after that. And then I eventually went to work in the slaughterhouse with my dad. And I was working in the box cooler, and, the boxes of meat would come in, I'd stack them on the shelf. And sometimes we'd get 4,000 or 5,000 boxes a day that each weighed, 80 pounds, 75, 80 pounds on average, some more, some less. But definitely worked a lot, worked hard, saved up enough money for my mission. Then one day my dad comes in, he's like, we got your mission call. We want to take you out to dinner. So they took me out to dinner and opened up my mission call at the Cracker Barrel in Paradise, Utah. to Scotland, Edinburgh Mission.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, my mom's got that on a recording somewhere, and my face. I had no idea what I was in store for, but definitely the best mission in the world.
Oh man,
So,
love that.
right before I left, I like to date a lot of people, and me and my friend would double date. And there's this girl that I knew that I really liked. She was in my seminary class, my computer class, and I called her up for a date like around Halloween time, and it just ended up not working out. So I called her up again later and took her on a date. And she says, "Do you have your mission call?" And I says, "Yeah, I do. Where are you going?" "Scotland." "When are you leaving?" And I told her Tuesday. The Friday before I left on my mission, I took her out on a date. So she was like, "Shouldn't you be preparing for your mission?" And I was like, "What's there to do?" I'm taking advantage of the time that I have to date,
And then you told her, "Don't get too attached."
That's right. Yeah. So I did take another girl out on Saturday. I can't even remember her name now. Actually, I can, but we won't talk about her too much. But
Oh goodness.
so, anyways, that's pre-mission.
Nice. So
Um,
timeline wise, again, you went when?
It was November 2006. So I actually voted in the midterms, and then my parents took me from the voting booths or wherever right to the airport, and I jumped on a plane. So I had the I voted sticker on my suit for a little bit.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool. So home November of 2008. What have you been up to since?
Yep. So November of 2008, apparently there was an economic recession that year that I had no idea happened.
Yeah.
And I got home, and thanks to my extended family, my family, friends, neighbors, people in my ward, they helped pay for my mission. So I had all that money still in my account. So my dad took me to buy a truck, and picked up a truck really cheap because of the economic recession and gas prices and things, and got a job working at the slaughterhouse again immediately. Started, I was the sticker. I slit throats on the kill floor for a little bit, and then I eventually worked my way back into the box cooler. So that was good times, good money. I did think about being a dentist for a while, and I went to a couple of years of schooling, and I was just like, I don't even know if I want to be a dentist. I pretty much just wanted to do it because I knew that dentists make a lot of money. And my grandpa had John Deere tractors, and I'd always loved John Deere green. It's my favorite color. And I was like, I want to paint my truck John Deere green. So me and my friend that dated a lot of girls in high school, we just pulled it in his barn and learned how to paint just by watching YouTube videos and trial and error. And I was like, man, I love doing this. I could do this my whole life. So I kind of dropped out of the dental school, and I took the auto collision class, and I learned everything there is to know about auto collision and auto mechanics. And after that, I got a job working at West Motor, and I'm jumping ahead. I'll have to go back, but I worked for West Motor, and then I ended up getting a job in Las Vegas at a body shop, and I managed a body shop for a little bit. And then I was like, man, I want to start my own business. I want to have my own business. So I started a business here in Tremonton, a used car dealership, and I can do everything to fix a car and selling used cars, and I'm enjoying it. So I'll have to jump back now. The first girl that I wanted to look up after I got home was a girl named Jenna Root. And I didn't have her number or anything, but we had like a phone book of sorts in our school calendar or something. And so I looked up her name and I called the number, and her dad has a gun, kind of a gun shop or a gun business. So when he answered the phone, he said, DNR Enterprises, this is Dave. And I was like, oh, shoot, I dialed the wrong number. Sorry. And I just about hung the phone up, and he was like, well, wait, who are you looking for? And I said, Jenna Root. And he's like, oh, she's right here. I'll let you talk to her. So he hands the phone over. And so luckily, if I would have hung up, or if he would have said, okay, I guess he dialed the wrong number, I don't know if I'd ever got in contact with my wife ever.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, I talked to her, asked her on a date. I dated her 3 times. She was like, I don't want anything to do with you. She was going to start an internship in Disney World. And she's like, I'm going to be gone for 3 months. I don't want a boyfriend. I don't want to be attached. She wouldn't even give me her phone number. So
Oh
I
man.
worked really hard. I
Hardcore.
took her on, I know, I took her on some really fun dates that she couldn't forget. One of them, me and Jeremiah Johnson double dated. And I drove down to Huntsville with her, and he had a church ball game, and Sister M showed up at the church ball game. He talked about that a little bit. So I got to introduce Jenna to Sister M, and she couldn't help but fall in love with me. She was gone in Disney World, and I flew out there and spent a couple days with her while she was in Disney World. And then when she came home, we were inseparable, and she finally did give me her phone number. And then yeah, I was telling my mom that I really like this girl and I'd like to marry her and stuff, and my mom called and scheduled the temple before I'd even proposed.
Oh my.
So, yeah. So our parents were actually meeting together to finalize wedding decisions, and I still hadn't proposed or given her the ring. So I was like, we better go do this real quick. So
Wow.
it was good. It was really good.
Proactive parents.
Right. So she's been good. She's worked with me really well, and she's my favorite companion by far of all the companions I've had. And she's a perfect girl for me, no question about it. We've got 2 sons. My oldest is 12, just turned 12, and then my youngest is 10. And my oldest name's Riley, and my youngest son's name is Dexter. Both of them were born on Sunday, an hour before church. Both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, yep. So
very cool. I love it. It sounds like you got a lot going on and some fun things happening with your family and your business.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Demeron, take us back now to Scotland. If you want, you can start MTC, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, so my parents took me to the airport. I'd never been on a plane in my life, and I don't even think I'd even been in the airport in my life. So, they kind of just pointed me in a direction, was like, good luck. And I can't remember who saw who first, but somehow me and Jeremiah Johnson got in contact. And I saw he had a badge on. He saw I had a badge on. And I was like, where are you going? Scotland. Cool. Let's just kind of coattail off each other, and maybe we'll make it there. So we did. And I remember flying in, and I tell people that, you're on top of the clouds and you see the sun, and then the plane starts to descend below the clouds, and it just rains the whole time that you're there until you get back on the plane and come back up through the clouds to see the sun again. So
that's accurate.
Yep. But I had kind of the same experience as some of the other missionaries. Everything was so green, and like it was different, immediately different. Just getting on the bus on the wrong side of the road, everything was just totally different to me. I'm a farm kid, not used to any of that British culture whatsoever. And so they throw you in a building where you don't get to see the outside at all, except for the Preston Temple, and they let you out for a little bit to knock doors and things. But it was a culture shock to me. And I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it being a culture shock, but it was for me really hardcore.
Yeah.
But had some fun times in my group. Elder Jeremiah Johnson. I think we're known as Elder Johnson's group. If anyone asks me what group I'm in, just say Jeremiah Johnson. They know exactly. Elder Roy Peckham, he was in my group, and Elder Stephen Gardner. And that was us, just 4 of us.
Very cool.
So in the MTC, I don't know why they always had the heat up so much in that place. It seemed like the heat was like 150 degrees. And so I would just leave the window open in our room. And I was like, you guys cool if we leave the window open? Everyone was down for it. So we'd sit in those hot classrooms all day, falling asleep. And then you'd walk into our room and it'd be like 60 degrees, perfect, fresh air, feeling, smell, great. And then you crawl under the covers and just fall fast asleep. I like the fresh air smell over there in England with the rain and everything.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So, one thing my scout leader told me is to read Preach My Gospel before I left on my mission. And I started to read it and I was just like, man, this has nothing to do with me. It's talking about investigators and things. And I was like, I'll just read it when I get on my mission. When I got to the MTC, I was like, maybe I should have read this because I felt like I was way behind. It seemed like Elder Peckham, he's bright, a lot smarter than I am. I was like, oh, I feel really stupid compared to this guy. And Elder Johnson seemed to always have all the right answers. When we were learning about asking questions, trying to remember what his name is. But he called Elder Johnson the interrogator because when it come to asking questions, Elder Johnson would just fire questions. And so he was just like, I'm going to call you the interrogator from now on. So that was pretty funny. And then Elder Stephen Gardner was my companion in the MTC.
Okay.
So I got to be with him a lot. And we'd sneak down and have food. And I was like, are you cool if we don't exercise in the morning? Because I really don't want to do that. And he was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's be first for breakfast. so that was good.
I love it.
Yeah. So I remember one time we were just kind of getting ready for bed, and it was quiet, and we just all started talking about life before the mission, what we were doing at home and stuff. And it was kind of getting heavy, and you know how that is. People are talking about things that are emotional and near and dear to them and things. And so they're like, well, what are you going to do when you get home from your mission, Elder Gardner? And he'd say it. And then, what are you going to do, Elder Johnson? And he'd say it. And they'd all kind of gone through and said what they were going to do. And they're like, what are you going to do when you get home, Elder Ashton? And Elder Johnson had asked me the question. And I was like, well, first thing is I'm going to marry your sister. Because I just couldn't deal with all the tension, the heaviness in there, like all the emotion. And so I was just like, lighten up, guys. We got 2 years ahead of us. You better buckle up. This ain't going to be over anytime soon, So I did love the MTC. It was a new experience. And I was like, I better learn as much as I can. And like I said, I felt like I didn't really prepare as much as I should have. And I remember one night I was cleaning the bathroom or going to the bathroom or something, and there was a missionary that came in, and it was just me and him in the bathroom, and he was just like, Elder Ashton, can I tell you something? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, shoot. And he's like, I just really think that you're a great example, and I think that you're going to be an excellent missionary. And for me, that was just like exactly what I needed to hear. I was so stressed out about, did I prepare enough? Am I going to be an effective missionary? And just to hear him say that made a huge difference to me. And he went to a different mission, but he was English. His name was Elder Lefebvre. It's spelled Lefevre, I think, like Elder Lefebvre or something. It was Elder Lefebvre. So if anyone knows an Elder Lefebvre that served their mission from November 2006, could you send him my way so I could be friends with him or tell him how much he means to me? I'd appreciate that. So
awesome.
But yeah, as far as the MTC goes, pretty much the same as everyone else. So we went off to Scotland and we rode the train up. I remember feeling like we should be talking to everyone, but didn't really know what to say since we were brand new missionaries. And we finally get up to the train station. I think it was Haymarket, and they picked us up. The APs picked us up and drove us around, and the Harry Potter castle, and this is where Braveheart was filmed. Same stuff. And I believed everything that they said. I mean, why wouldn't I? They're the assistants, right? And President Frederick's in the mission van with us, and I remember just saying, "How long you been out, President Frederick?" And he'd been out about 4.5 months. And so I was like, great, I'm going to have the same mission president. I was really excited about just having the same mission president the whole time. And just love President Frederick. They took us to the bed and breakfast, and I guess they didn't take missionaries to the bed and breakfast too long after we went. We may have been like one of the last groups to go to the bed and breakfast.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, one or two.
Why did it?
So,
do you know? Stop doing that?
I think just the ease of, they would just set up like sleeping pads and stuff in the upstairs room of the mission home, and I think that was just easier. But it's kind of sad because the bed and breakfast was cool.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Yeah, but man, I jumped in the shower in the morning and I was like, how do I work this thing? Like, there's a computer on the wall. Give me a knob.
Oh, it's true. Those things
And
were
then I'm
ridiculous.
like, power? Like, why is there power in this place where we have water? And isn't Britain like 220 volts? I was like, I don't like this at all.
Yeah, that was always a little questionable to me.
Right. But then after you found out how they work, you could sit and shower forever because you'd never have hot water run out. They just stay working the whole time. And this is, I'm not going to say who it was, but they had curtains draped over the radiator. And one of the missionaries in my group was like, that's a fire hazard. That's going to start on fire. So he like moved the curtains away from the radiators because he thought it would start a fire. And I was like, it's hot water in there. It's hot water can't start a fire. You know? But it's just like, that's culture, man. We'd never been to Scotland or had radiators. You know, we're in Utah. You know, we're not used to that kind of stuff. So
no,
I'd never seen a front load washing machine before.
Yeah,
That freaked me out.
I got a couple stories about washing machines in this that might blow your mind a little bit.
Oh man,
so
funny.
Yep, they picked us up. We went to Prattsville. We went to the Disgrace and we sang Praise to the Man, I think, and they had us recite our purpose as a missionary. And they were just laughing at us the whole time because the Disgrace, you know, we had no idea. And then it was an Orson Pratt or Parley P. Pratt. I can never remember which one.
Parley P. Pratt, I believe.
Yeah, I think Jack's right.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess he set a goal to baptize 200 or something. And so when they told us to set a goal, like I hiked to the top of the hill and I was like, 200 it is. I had no idea how many baptisms. I didn't have a clue. So I was like, 200 sounds good. About 8 a month. You know, if I can keep on that, I can make 200 by the end. You know, something around there, 8, 9 a month. We can do this. No problem. You know, just crack my knuckles. Here we go. And they took us back to the mission home, and there's 4 missionaries there that were going to be our trainers. And I looked at them, and I was just like, man, these are real missionaries. Like, these guys know everything. There isn't any question that they don't have an answer for. They probably know the Bible and Book of Mormon, Preach My Gospel inside and out. And it was Elder Marsh, who you trained, Zach.
Yeah.
And Elder Jensen was another one, Elder Bockholt, and Elder Payne. And I remember looking at all of them and just being like, man, I'd be happy to have any one of them as my trainer. But there's one in particular that I was like, that guy's cool. Like, Elder Bockholt's cool, but I think he was from California or Utah. I can't remember where he's from. And Elder Payne was Canadian. Can't remember where Elder Marsh was from. But
Utah.
Elder Jensen was from Denmark. And I was like, that would be so cool to have a Danish trainer.
Yeah.
And so we got up and they told us where they were serving. And Elder Jensen gets up and says that he's serving in Sterling. And President Frederick announces from the back that Elder Ashton will be his companion. And I was just like, wow, I got Elder Jensen. Plus, he was like a bodybuilder, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, both of us were like strong because I was throwing boxes and hay and all that kind of stuff around. And I was like, man, nothing's going to stop us. We're going to be like the most powerful companionship in the mission. So stoked to have Elder Jensen. So
it's awesome.
Before I get too far into it, some missionaries might think by my list of companions and areas and stuff that I like. My mission was just stacked with all the best areas and best companions. And I did have to go through some hardships, just a couple, and I don't want to embarrass anyone. So I've got a couple stories real quick. You know, I had to toss a couple companions out of bed because they didn't wake up on time. I had a companion come into my area, and like immediately, days later, a bunch of members and investigators was just like, "Don't bring that guy back." And
Yikes.
yeah. So some rough stuff happened. I didn't always get along with all my companions, but ultimately, I love all my companions and learned to love all my companions. Some of my investigators, like I don't want to embarrass anyone, so these are some things that I'm just not going to attach a name to, or like say this is who it was, but don't speculate while I'm telling you. But some of the fun investigators that I had, one of them was a stripper, so that was cool to teach somebody who had repented and made it back onto the straight and narrow path. One of them was somebody who had previously been baptized, and they didn't know that they were baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So when we baptized him and gave the name to the office elders, they were like, "He's already here." So,
Oh gosh.
yeah. Yeah. So we had to address that with that person and say, "Have you been baptized before?" You know. And
Wow.
then there was the whole thing of like, do we count him as a baptism, or you know, what do we do? And like, it was a big thing with Sully Hole and stuff. But you know, I've had some interesting experiences on a mission, that's for sure. But just part of serving a mission, I guess. You learn along the way. So, anyways,
Agreed.
I went to Sterling with Elder Jensen, and we got on the train, and the first member of the Sterling Ward that I met got on the train, and I was like, "What do I do? I don't even know what to say." So I was like, "My name's Elder Ashton. How's it going?" And it was James Bescott, if anyone knows him. And Elder Jensen was just talking with him the whole time, and he didn't really have a thick accent, really, so I could understand him. It was okay. We got back to the flat in Sterling, and Elder Jensen's like, "We've got to do some shopping." So I was like, "Cool, great." So we would go to Tesco. Man, another culture shock. Elder Jensen, I'm looking at the prices of things, and I was like, I don't even know if this is a good price. Like, what's bread supposed to cost? What's milk supposed to cost? I have no clue. And Elder Jensen kept saying that we need to find mints. And I was like, "Is that because we can't chew gum?" And he's like, "No, mints. And I was like peppermint, spearmint. He's like, "No, mints." And so I was like, "Okay, man, I'll you lead, I'll follow." And so we like go to the frozen section, and he pulls out this bag of frozen ground beef, and it says MINCE on it, mints. And I was like, "What the heck is going on here?" And one of my companions told me you had to boil that stuff first before you could actually cook it. Otherwise, it'd just be all fat. Did you guys boil that stuff?
No, I'm sure I never bought it. There's no way.
You're probably better off for not eating that stuff. I don't even know what that was. Mints. So we get back to the flat, and he's unloading all the groceries and stuff, and I'm just like, "Didn't you get mints?" Like, you know, I don't even know what Tic Tacs. I don't know, where's your mints at? And that's what he wanted, was that ground beef stuff. So later on in the transfer, someone gave us some mincemeat pies, and I don't know about you guys, but I like chicken pot pies, beef pot pies. I like to put a little ketchup on them. So I took some of those mincemeat pies and put them in the toaster oven or microwave and cooked them up, put them on my plate, and was like dumping ketchup on them. And Elder Jensen's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I like ketchup on these. I think it's good." So I like took a fork and cut into it. Mincemeat is fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was ground beef in that pie. So I just like threw the fork down and I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't even know where I am.
This place is upside down.
Yeah. They got juice in bottles. Like, you know, I was like, are you supposed to take shots of this stuff and then like a water chaser? I don't get the diluting juice. I'm just like, where am I? At the front load washing machine? Apparently we had one that you could put your clothes in and wash and dry them, and they'd come out like all wrinkly and still kind of wet. And it was like,
so
if this is the best we get, then I guess that's all we get, right?
Oh, those were so bad.
Yeah, but ultimately, I loved serving with Elder Jensen. The very first teaching appointment that we had was with an investigator in a member's home, and it was Sandy Watt's home, I believe, the Watt home, Sandy and Isabel Watt, I believe. And they were having a Thanksgiving dinner. What's funny is I was the only American out of everyone there. Like Elder Jensen's Danish, and so we had turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy, and he's talking to me, and I'm just watching his tongue roll around in his mouth, and I have no idea what he's saying. And so I would think that I knew what he said, so I'd like nod, and Elder Jensen would be like, he's asking you where you're from. And I'm like nodding. I'm like, I have no clue, man. Like, I'm sorry, dude. I don't know what I'm doing here yet. But that investigator ended up getting baptized, and that was like the golden investigator, the golden kind of scenario. I can't remember what President Frederick called it, like the gem or the diamond or something like that, was to have an investigator in a member's home for a lesson. And Elder Jensen taught me that the very first night. So that was really cool. Elder Shenton talked about, they were in Alloa, we were in Sterling, so we got to spend some time with them. And he and Elder Smith spending the night there flat every Saturday so that we could make it to church on time. 50 Shint. Another thing about Elder Shenton, he was known for having smelly feet. Has anyone said that? Like the worst smelly feet. Like Elder Smith would not let him walk around the flat if he didn't have socks on. He had to have socks or slippers or shoes. He wasn't allowed barefoot in the apartment or in the flat. Sorry. So, and I loved Elder Shenton. Like, he was just like, everything's cool. He's chill. Everything's good. Elder Smith was my district leader, and I saw him as an authority figure right away because I was like, I don't want to make him mad. I want him to be happy. I'm a brand new missionary. And I really loved Elder Smith. He was a good example. Let's see. Elder Jensen and I, we got along pretty well, I would say, but I think that there was a little bit of not only cultural with Scotland, but cultural with him being from Denmark and me being American. And, you know, it takes a little bit to learn how to live with somebody. And he was trying to do the greenie stuff. Like, he wanted to do the jobby supper thing and try and tease me about stuff. And I wasn't down for it. I was just like, man, I'm a missionary. Like, I don't want you to make fun of me or tease me. But like, there was times when, like, I didn't bring any P-Day clothes at all. I only had a pair of basketball shorts, and I didn't have any service clothes. And so I just told him, one of these preparation days, I need to go buy a pair of Levi's. And he told me, he's like, you're going to spend a lot of money for Levi's here. They're way expensive. And I was just like, well, is it because it's like rare to have denim here or something? Is that why all these guys wear trackies? So they can't get denim? I mean, I grew up in Utah, so Levi's are jeans, no matter what brand they are. But I'd say Levi's, and he's thinking like name brand Levi's. Yeah, and he'd be right. You know, I'd spend a lot of money on name brand Levi's. But yeah, it's just communication breakdown, stuff like that. You know, and you know, him wanting to be funny. There was I would say "holy cow" a lot, just because I still say it. It's just kind of my thing, I guess. And one time we came out of a teach, he's like, you can't say that here, dude. And I was thinking, what? Why? And he's like, people are thinking that you're calling them fat. And I was like, oh, I better not say that. And so I like really tried to not say holy cow, and I'd catch myself all the time trying to not say holy cow. And it was just funny, you know.
That is good.
Yeah, but it was around Christmas time. Elder Shenton and Elder Smith had a bunch of gifts. They had a little tree set up in their flat, and it was full of gifts, and we had nothing. So I was looking at Elder Jensen, and I was like, "What the heck are you doing, Elder Jensen? Like, do the members hate us, or what's the deal? Why can't we get some body wash and some celebrations tins?" You know? And Christmas time come around, I don't think we got very much, but Elder Smith and Elder Shenton gave us a tin of celebrations and some body wash, I believe, and some Lynx body spray.
Lynx.
And
oh my gosh.
So
I forgot it was called that. That's so good.
Yeah. Ultimately, I had a good time serving with Elder Jensen. There was one time I debated on even telling this story, but I kind of felt like he was annoyed with me. I was annoyed with him. We were walking down the road, and he was talking on the phone, and we're trying to cross this road we had to cross. I knew we had to cross. And so I was like, Elder Jensen, we can cross now. And he was just like putting his hand up, be quiet, I'm on the phone. And we were getting to where we would have to cross. And so I was just saying, I'm just going to cross right now. So I crossed the street, and Elder Jensen just stared at me. And I kept walking, and I was like, come on, let's go. Elder Jensen, cross the street. And he just kept walking on the other side of the street, and he was ignoring me. And I was like, this guy. So I was like, come on, man. So he crosses the street, and I was just like, Elder Jensen, you got a problem with me? Let's go. And he was like, I'm calling Elder Smith right now. Like, he didn't say nothing, but I'm calling Elder Smith, our district leader. So he called him up, and Elder Smith had to come and talk to me. And I was just like, I did the wrong thing there. I shouldn't have been so quick to judge. I shouldn't have been so quick to get hot-headed, So I apologize, Elder Jensen. I'd like you to come on the podcast and tell us how it was serving with me and all the problems that you had with me.
Are you still in touch with him at all?
I'm not. I was on Facebook for a while, but I guess he deleted his account, or I don't know what happened, because I can't find him. And I'd love to be in touch with him. And sad thing is my next area was Alloa. And so I still served around him. But after that, I never saw him again, like maybe one time. And he went home, and I never really got a chance to tell him how much I appreciated him as being my trainer. And that's always kind of weighed heavy on my mind. And I just like him to know how much he impacted my whole mission, my whole life, really. Yeah. So one more story from Sterling real quick. Elder Care is in that ward. And I had no idea how lucky I was to be serving in Elder Care's area. And we went to their house for Christmas, and we watched God's Army 2. Have you guys seen that dumpster fire?
No. I did not watch that one.
Save yourself. It's not even worth watching. But when we watched it, it's about missionaries, of course. And one missionary is like breaking the rules. They're letting this homeless guy sleep on their couch. Another missionary is talking with the lady that lives across the hall, and they end up fornicating. And like, the missionary wants to commit suicide, so he slits his wrists. And then it's during Christmas time, and he's got his wrists all bandaged up, and they're looking at the nativity scene, and he's like crying because he knows that Christ died for his sins. And then it ends with the credits and stuff, and it's real quiet. Yeah, it's real quiet and stuff. And Sister Care's like, wow, what did you think, elders? And Elder Smith, Elder Shenton, Elder Jensen, they're just like, yeah, thanks for inviting us to watch the movie. We appreciate it. And I was like, that movie was rubbish. And Elder Care looked at me and was like, that's my thoughts exactly, Elder. And I was like, he's breaking all the rules. What the heck are they doing? And Elder Jensen was like, man, I didn't know it was going to happen when you said like they did a nice thing letting us come over to watch the movie, and you didn't want me to say anything negative. And I was just like, hey, call a spade, my man. But I wish I'd have known how lucky I was to be in Elder Care's home for Christmas. And, you got to call home for Christmas, and I'd only been out like a month and a half, and I was like, hey, everything's good. Love you guys. We'll talk to you at Mother's Day, pretty much, But yeah, one thing Elder Jensen told me is that the guy in his bishopric, and this is one thing that I don't know if it's true or not, so I need Elder Jensen to come in and either confirm or tell me that he was joking. But he said that the guy that played Christ in Finding Faith in Christ was in his bishopric. And I looked it up, and it says he's from Denmark, so it could be true. But Elder Jensen, you got to confirm or deny that, man. I don't know for sure. It's been on my mind. I need to know. So let's hear it.
Come on the podcast, Joseph. We'd love to have you.
Yep, we need him. So that was my time with Elder Jensen. He trained the next moves, and I got called to go to the faraway land of Alloa, which was like a 10-minute bus ride to serve with Elder Garrett Smith. And I loved serving with Elder Smith. He was still the district leader. I got to go with the zone leaders a lot, which was Elder Hardy and Elder Ford. And I went on exchanges with Elder Hardy. That was the first time I got a battered Mars bar. He bought me a battered Mars bar. It's delicious. We stayed in their flat in Edinburgh, and they had a real dryer with a lint hose that went out the window and everything. And I was like, please, can I bring my clothes to dry them here, please? So,
oh goodness,
I had a really good time with Elder Hardy. And again, still being a new missionary, I was concerned about my effectiveness, and he was just like, you're doing great, Elder. We love that you're in our zone. And I really, really appreciate Elder Hardy as well. I know he said that it was hard for him to be a leader in his podcast and that he hated doing that kind of stuff, but it made a difference. So very much appreciated to you, Ram. With Elder Smith, we got to go see a lot of members, and just in the Alloa ward, Bishop Stewart was our bishop, Brother Beveridge was our ward mission leader, Simon Beveridge, I believe.
Yeah.
The APs, I forgot to say, the APs when we came in was Stanley and Pilkington, and then it was Stanley and McConkey when I was with Elder Smith, and I got to go on an exchange with Elder McConkey. And I was telling him about the slaughterhouse, and he was just grossed out about it. But I was like, that's beef, man. That's where we get beef, bro. And he had served in Alloa before Elder McConkey had. And there's this tall guy named David Allen. He had to have been 7 feet tall. And I can't believe that Elder Shenton and Elder McConkey didn't talk about him, because that guy was legendary. He was, like I said, really tall, had bleached blonde hair. And we taught his family. He was baptized. I don't think anyone else got baptized, at least while I was there, for sure. But another washing machine story. I had brand new garments, being newly endowed, being a new missionary, and I needed to get them all washed. And so I checked, and I saw in the window that it was empty. So I threw all my garments in, started a load before we left for the day. No dryer on that washing machine. We had to hang everything up. Well, I get home after we proselyted for the day, and I go to pull my garments out, and they're all blue. Every single one of them is blue.
Oh no.
I was like, what the heck went on? Apparently, Elder Smith had washed his socks, and they all stuck to the drum on the outside, so it just looked like it was empty. And they were all brand new socks. So when I threw my garments in, they just dyed all my garments blue. And I was like, I've got one set of white G's now, and I'm wearing them. What the heck am I going to do? So he said, call Sister Frederick. And I was like, I need to buy some more garments. And she's like, there's no way you're going to get enough garments. And she's like, just try bleaching them. But she didn't think that would work. So we went to the store and got some bleach, and it worked. But
oh my word.
That was something. And Elder Smith just laughed and laughed at me. Elder Smith wanted to run every morning, and that was something that I would not stand for running. And I'd missed biscuits and gravy for breakfast. And Elder Smith made a deal with me. He said, if we can go running every morning, I'll make you biscuits and gravy. And that was the only thing that would allow me to run, was biscuits and gravy. But it canceled each other out, because we'd run for 30 minutes and then we'd eat an hour's worth of fat and extra crap. But Elder Smith, Elder Smith was he was a hardcore district leader, a really good second companion. Really made me want to work and be a good missionary. Always made sure that I was on top of my game. Something Elder Jensen did, I forgot to mention, was he's memorize Joseph Smith's first vision so that you can just say it by memory instead of having to read it. And so Elder Smith would tell me to memorize other things too, because it would mean a lot more if it came from memory instead of by reading it. And that was something I really appreciated. So something that Elder Smith liked to do is have big old knots in his ties. And so his ties would be way short, but his knot would be huge. And so he didn't care how short it was. So he'd always have to button his suit jacket down so that you could have a huge knot. And that was like a no-no in hammer time. But that was way before hammer time anyways. The Falkirk elders were in our district, Elder Churko and King, and they were both from Cache Valley, which is where I came from. I left out of Hiram, Utah. Yeah. So I got to go on exchanges with them in Falkirk, which is cool. We got to go to a district leader council, and Elder Hardy and Elder Ford said that we were going to do a Zion's camp kind of thing. And they told us from the mission home, we're going to run to Pratt's Hill and back. And so they're like, ready, set, go. So we took off running, and apparently it was supposed to be like a big joke and everyone was supposed to know. But me and Elder Justin Wong, and I think Elder Tim Ehat, and maybe Elder Lucas, I can't remember, but we all took off running to Pratt's Hill. None of us had phones. I didn't even know where Pratt's Hill was. So I'm just running in the streets of Edinburgh, following Elder Wong. And I was like, I hope this guy knows where he's going, because I'm lost already. And I think Pratt's Hill is a few miles from the mission home. So this wasn't going to be like an hour thing. It was going to be an all-day event or something. But they had to send out the APs and the mission van to find us because we were gone. So we got back, and Elder Hardy was like, guys, it was just a joke. You know? And I still to this day, I'm just like, all right, whatever. I was just trying to do what I was told. So Elder Dallin H. Oaks came, and we got to meet Elder Oaks, and that was cool. Elder McConkey and Elder Pilkington had to teach him one of the lessons. They wanted him to plan and teach one of the lessons, and I was like, man, that'd be really like nerve-wracking to teach one of the apostles at the time. And Elder McConkey was just like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And Stanley was like, I think it's a big deal. So
yeah, Carl.
Yeah. So anyways, I had a good time with Elder Smith. It was only 6 weeks. I really appreciated Elder Smith's podcast. I learned a lot about Elder Smith from his podcast that I didn't know. He never shared anything that he shared in his podcast with me. I'd always just seen him as such a good example, and still do, as just a stalwart member of the church with a strong testimony. And I love Elder Jensen. He was, one of my favorites. Elder Smith, definitely one of my favorites. It was a quick 6 weeks, and then I got called to go to Pollock to serve with Elder Nettleship. And what's funny is I followed Elder Shenton into Alloa, and then I followed Elder Shenton into Pollock. So I was like, wherever Elder Shenton goes, I guess I'm going. So I served with Elder Nettleship right after Elder Shenton. And from Elder Nettleship's podcast, I survived Elder Nettleship. So
Nice.
You remember him saying that. Some things, Elder Shenton, his kind of buzzwords was fantastic. Like everything was fantastic. He said it all the time. He'd be like, we missed the bus and water got splashed on us. And he'd be like, fantastic, or someone got baptized. Fantastic. Won $1 million. Fantastic. Love Elder Shenton for that. Elder Nettleship's word was flipping. Like he was always flipping this, flipping that, flipping. I love Elder Nettleship. He's the coolest. We had a car, in Pollock. It was an automatic, probably the only automatic Corsa in the whole mission. Once we went on exchanges, Elder Nettleship was the district leader. He went into another area with a car that had a clutch. And so when he got back, he was driving the car and he went to put his foot on the clutch, which that car didn't have, and just about put both of us through the windshield.
Oh, no.
I was like, what the heck are you doing, man? Like, I know I have kidneys now. And he's like, I forgot this car was automatic. So,
that is a rarity in our mission.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yep. So that's when I finally started keeping a journal. I didn't keep a journal for the first 3.5 months. I don't know why. I wish I did, but I kept a journal, wrote in it every single day from there on out on my mission. I paid for my first haircut in Pollock, and that was 12 pounds. And I was like, that's ridiculous because I can just buy a set and cut my own hair. So that's what I did from then on out, 12 pounds for a haircut, man. So I still cut my own hair to this day. I don't pay for haircuts, but don't look too close. So, we did a lot of member work. There was a recent convert named Faye Reed. She was way cool. Margaret and Jake Bryce, we worked a lot with them. David McKechnie was our ward mission leader. We went on exchanges a lot with him. We went on exchanges. I went driving with him, and it was my first time driving a car in Scotland. Immediately turned onto the right-hand side of the road, and he started crapping bricks, man. He's like, what are you doing? So I was like, it's my first time. I don't know. And of course, it was a divided road with a median, so I had to drive the whole length of the road in order to get on the correct side of the road. So I went on exchanges with Bishop McKechnie, and we went to a lady's home, Sister McDougall, Mary McDougall. She had a daughter that was about 12, 13 that wasn't baptized. And me and Bishop were talking, was just like, she needs to get baptized. And Sister McDougall says, absolutely. So we taught her all the lessons, and I got to baptize Jillian McDougall. She was my first and only baptism, the whole mission. First time I ever got in whites and baptized. She had a nice dress on to get baptized in. Went down in the font. Water was fine, correct depth, everything. First time, take her down, dress comes up. So David McKechnie is like, he's like, you have to push the dress in between her legs. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, man. I was like, we'll try this again. So I said the prayer, took her down, dress comes back up, and he's like, push the dress in between her legs. And I was like, I am not going to do that. I cannot do that. So I was like, push the dress in between your legs. So she kind of pushed the dress in between her legs and held it between her knees. And third time's the charm, she was baptized. And so her and I were really good friends to this day. Her mom sadly passed away not too long ago. And she was a really good friend of mine. Jillian still is an excellent friend of mine. Elder Nettleship talked a little bit, and Elder Shenton talked about us having to move flats. The first flat that we were in was terrible shape. It was like a 4-plex, and we were upstairs on the right. I guess somebody had gotten murdered outside that flat, so they were picking a new one. The walls were paper thin, and because they were mirror images, our bedroom was close to the bedroom on the other one on the other side. And they'd left on vacation or something, and his alarm would go off at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it would just go and go and go, and we could hear it. I was like, this sucks.
Oh, man.
So, that flat was dirty. It was disgusting. We cleaned it out. We moved to a new flat. Elder Nettleship called it the party flat because it was blue and yellow and green painted on it. Huge sectional couch, front yard, backyard. It had a dishwasher and a washing machine right next to each other. So we had dishes going in the dishwasher and clothes in the washing machine. We came back from an appointment and opened the door, and smoke came out the front door. We're like, what the heck? And so we walked in. I says, that smells like an electrical fire. So we start looking, and the outlet that those two were plugged into wasn't rated for both of those appliances to go at the same time. And it was just smoking. It was on fire. That flat probably would have burnt to the ground if we didn't get home when we did. And it's funny. you guys talked about the wasps in Johnston Flat, was it?
Yeah.
But it was like, all we did was we unplugged the dishwasher, and that's it. Like, we never told anyone or called the mission home. So, and it was like, why didn't we ever do that? And then I think back, like, I work with cars now. I was in some areas for 6 months. We never changed the oil in our cars or checked the tires or nothing. And it's like those cars were running purely on the faith of the missionaries of Scotland. And that's it. So, Elder Trotier ended up coming in for a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and Elder Nettleship talked about us moving a futon in so he could sleep in there too. And we talked about bear stories. You know, I was an Eagle Scout, so went camping in the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho and just about got ate by a bear a couple of times. A couple of times got ate by a bear in Wyoming, you know, just normal stuff when you're from Utah. We had Elder Tomlinson and Luke's, Ben Tomlinson, and then Tobias Luke's. He was on. I got to go on exchange with them. I forget what area they were in. I want to say Greenock, but it's forever away from Pollock. So maybe they were in Greenock. I can't remember. I re-listened to Elder Luke's trying to find out. And that's my best guess was Greenock. McKay Lynch and Will Coxon. What's his first name? Is it Chad? Will Coxon?
Yep.
Those two, they were so fun to be around. It was just a comedy show when you were around those two. They were my favorites. I think in Johnston, there was Creighton Petty and Eric Gregerson. Those guys were way cool. We played football a couple times with them. One of the Paisley members was a goalkeeper, and I didn't know football. I knew nothing about soccer. Like, I'd score goals and they'd be like, "You're offsides." And I was like, "What the heck does that even mean?" Like, you were too close inside. And I was like, so I was the best one to receive the ball and I can't score because I'm too close? I was like, that makes no sense. You know, I never understood it, but I didn't even have cleats. And I just had tennis shoes and I ended up sliding. Like, I was running and I slid into one of the members in Paisley. I can't remember what his name was, but I just about broke his back, I think. And I was just like, that's it. I'm done playing football. No more. You know, I'm going to kill somebody because you guys are tall and I'm 6'4". I was about 220, 230 pounds and just a force that shouldn't be reckoned with without cleats on a soft football pitch. And I always had to not go too crazy, but Elder Trotier had us doing the haka in Sister Bryce's living room. I'd never done that before, and for some reason we did it. And it's the last time I did the haka. So thanks, Elder Trotier. But yeah, pretty much that was my time in Pollock. I loved it. Elder Nettleship was a great companion. Sometime around that, Elder McConkey put out like a survey to say what was the best area to serve in the mission. And it came down to that Ayr was the very best area to serve in because the bishop had Stobbs the baker. And he was so on board with missionary work. And like, it was just nice being on the West Coast and all that stuff. And so moves calls came, got my call to go serve with Elder David Stainton in Ayr. And way excited for that. I believe it was Martin and McConkey that were the APs now that Elder Stanley had gone home. And Elder McConkey told me that Elder Stainton had been a leader and he wanted Elder Stainton to train me to be a leader. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm down with that. Awesome. So for the first 6 weeks, just me and Elder Stainton. Elder Martin talked about him. He had a duvet that had a lady in a swimsuit. And so, like, when his head was sticking out, her body was with his head. Yeah. He had an alarm clock that had LEG. If you guys know who that is, he's famous over in Britain. And it's like, I think it's Sacha Baron Cohen or something that he's just dresses up and says weird things. And that was recorded every morning. I can't remember what he says. So Elder Stainton, get on here and tell us what it says. But every morning we had Ali G waking us up.
Amazing.
Yeah, probably about 3 weeks into serving with Elder Stanton, it was just missionary work as normal. And so during companion study or planning meeting or something, I was like, Elder Stanton, when are you going to start training me to be a leader? And he just looked at me. He's like, what are you even talking about? I said, Elder McConkie told me that you were supposed to train me to be a leader. And he just laughed in my face, like belly laughing. And then he started pointing at me and he was just like, flipping a spirer.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, man, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I was told. And that was something that was funny because the next 6 weeks I got called to be the district leader in that district. First, it was Elder Frainer, Chris Frainer, that was our district leader, and he was in Kilmarnock.
Mm-hmm.
And Elder Shenton was the zone leader with Elder Kilgore, Colin Kilgore. And I wanted to be in contact with him, but he won't accept my Facebook friend request. So come on, Colin.
If you're on LinkedIn, he's on there.
Okay, I'll check him out. He was another one. I couldn't really tell because I was like, Kilgore, that'd make a good cage fighter name. And he's like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm a cage fighter. And I was like, dude, you're only like 5.5 feet tall. And he's like, no, man. He's like, I'll tear you up.
So I didn't want to mess with Colin, but
right.
you knew he had that fire inside of him somewhere. He would tear you apart.
Definitely. Did you know about the Kilgore diet?
No, what's that?
It was rice, and you'd get the canned vegetables with peas and carrots, and you'd drain it and put that on top of the rice, and then a can of tuna, and then salad cream over the top. That was the Kilgore diet. He said he ate that for lunch and dinner every single day. If he didn't have a dinner appointment, that's all he ate. And so I was like, I'll give it a try. And it wasn't that bad, and it was cheap. But, I mean, it was mission food. I would never eat it again. So the Kilgore diet.
We got to write that down.
Yeah.
That's classic.
It's not
right
hard.
there.
And if you want to spice it up, put some salt and pepper on that or some curry powder, mix it up.
We probably do need to put together a recipe book.
Yeah. That and the, what's the Samoas? I think McKay Lynch made a Samoa the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
So
the first recipe has to be beans and toast, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then a full Scottish breakfast if we're getting posh on
there you
everyone.
go.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So
sorry,
Elder Stanton's buzzword was yes be. Did you guys know Elder Stanton at all? It was yes be all the time.
Yes be.
Yep.
all these words you keep saying with Nettleship, with Shenton. Yep. It's so funny because I can hear them saying all of it. It's really funny.
Yeah. Yep. So we had a car in that area. We had a new flat in Prestwick by the airport. So Elder Stanton all the time, every time a plane would take off or land, how far was that plane, Elder? And it got old really fast. I remember me and Elder Stanton would fight each other over post because we'd be like, oh, hen post is here. And we'd hear it fall in the slot and we'd both run and like push each other over trying to get to the post. And if he got some hen post or I got some hen post, like we would just rub it in each other's faces. It was such good times with him. Air was such a great area. Bishop Gilardi and his wife, Andrew Gilardi, those guys are just rock stars as far as supporting the missionaries. And I started gaining weight. I gained 3 stone in air. So I went from like 220 to 260, 280. Like I was fat. And I didn't even eat Staub's the Baker. I felt so bad because all you had to do is show your badge and they'd give you whatever you wanted for free. And other missionaries and even some members would take advantage of it. And I didn't want to just because I had so much respect for Bishop Gilardi. And but we had so many DAs and everything. We had breakfast appointments, lunch appointments, dinner appointments. Sometimes we'd have 2 dinner appointments in a night. And like we just got fed really well. The members there were awesome. Les Cairns was our ward mission leader. His son, Jamie Cairns, was in the Ogden North Mission, which was my mission. And he was coming home. Yep. So like he came home and he came from my mission. He never served in my area, but he told me that in Utah, they would do the meal of faith where they'd walk in a restaurant without a wallet, no cards, no money, nothing. and they would order whatever they wanted. And he's like, every single time a member paid for it, every time. And he's like, we'd go in to get new shoes or a suit, and a member would pay for it. And he's like, we'd get our $3 a day, and it would just compound over the months because members were always paying for our stuff. And I was like, what a loser.
God.
But he was like, I think he was in the New Era and the Ensign magazine. There's pictures of him in the New Era and the Ensign, just because he's such a photogenic guy, Jamie Cairns. And, with this mission badge on. And I just told him, you'll never see me in the New Era, never, ever. But his family, Les Cairns, Marlon Cairns, they took really good care of us. The Sharkies, you guys heard about the Sharkies. And I could sit and talk with Brother Sharkey for forever. And Brother Sharkey and Bishop Gilardi came to visit. They came to our house. I was coming home from work. They came in. They were talking with my wife, and she's like, I don't understand what Bishop Gilardi's saying at all. He's Italian, but Scottish. So he's loud, but he also has a really thick Glasgow brogue kind of. And I just freaking love it. Same thing with Bishop Gilardi. He's just such a good man and convert to the church. Very enthusiastic. Andrew would be like, Umberto, why are you yelling at the missionaries? Because he would get fired up about something, and he'd raise his voice and the windows would shake. And it's like the spirit was just so strong all the time. And like, I just love that guy. Chris Reed was a new recent convert. I think Elder James McCabe, talked about him. Really cool guy. He took us out. We lifted weights with him in the morning. I guess he got a parking ticket and saw our car, so we put the parking ticket on our car, and then it just turned into like tag who's going to put the parking ticket on each other's car. And just really cool guy. The Colborn family, way cool. Something I did with Brother Colborn, Andrew Colborn, is we went to their home and we were sharing a lesson. I was memorizing just insignificant passages and preach my gospel that no one should have memorized. And I would hand my preach my gospel to the head of the household and just say, like, could you read this quote from President Wilford Woodruff about missionary work? And so they'd read it, and I'd be like, I love that quote because, this or that. And then I'd be like, and right below it, just a couple paragraphs down, Elder Lorenzo Snow said that missionary work is this, and I'd just recite the whole thing off and to try and impress him. And Brother Colborn looks at me and is like, very impressive, Elder Ashton. Like, he saw right through me. He knew that I did that to him. But I love Andrew Colborn. He's a good man. Evans Dixon, he had a radio station, and so me and Elder Staten got to go on the radio. Solid Gold with Evans Dixon. It was way cool. We had a copy of it, but I can't remember what happened to the tape. But me and Elder Staten are on there. There was a family, Mary Graham, Craig Chalmers, and Graham Menzies. Me and Graham Menzies, we are best friends to this day. He keeps in contact with me all the time. He's around about our age. He tells me about how his life's going. I tell him how about life's going, and I just love that guy. And I miss him. The thing is, it's like I was never really homesick while I was on my mission, but now that I'm home, I'm homesick for Scotland. It's funny. And I haven't been back yet, but even if I get there, it's not going to be the same. Like, I'm not going to be a missionary. I'm not going to have the mantle and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I miss those people. And thank goodness for technology. We can FaceTime. I FaceTimed Mary Graham a couple of times and talk with her, and it's just been amazing to be friends with them. In the Air Ward, the sisters talk a lot about Jimmy. Jimmy didn't want anything to do with elders. Like, if we weren't sisters, he didn't invite us over. Like, he'd barely shake our hands, but he's a good guy, from what I saw. And I have no complaints, but he loved the sister missionaries, and there wasn't sisters with me and Elder Staten. Adam will pray. He used to take us out to get duck, and we'd have duck pancakes, way good. And he's a good friend of mine too, and I miss that guy. Let's see. There was Paul Love and his family. Like, just so many good members. And I was there for 6 months, so I got to know a lot of them. There's Andrew McGee. Corey Stevenson was in that ward, and his grandpa, or one of his relatives was Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of Treasure Island.
Wow.
There's another book that he wrote too. I can't remember, but Margaret Hamilton was Angie Gilardi's mom. And we went to visit her, and she's just one of my favorites as well. She would feed us all the time and was always helping us out and giving us support, and just fun to be around. I'll talk about Sister Powell later, but Sister Powell's been over to visit a couple of times, and I'll be like, tell Sister Hamilton hi for me, and Sister Powell will respond back, you're still her favorite. So I made a little bit of an impact, I guess, in there, but
That's cool.
the first 6 weeks, it was just me and Elder Stanton. The next 6 weeks, we got Sister Lyon, Marge Lyon, and Sister Josie Scott came down from Inverness to do a mini mission. And President Frederick told me, they're going to do recent convert and less active work in the ward. So you and Elder Stanton will focus on investigators and member work, and they'll do the less active work. And so I kind of just left it at that. And there was a big miscommunication. I was a brand new leader. I didn't know what I was doing. There was a new investigator that was an older lady, and Brother Cairns sent the sisters out to visit them. And it was like a 30-minute bus ride. And we had also gone out to visit her. It was, I think, a media referral or something. And something didn't work out, or I can't remember what the deal was, but at our ward mission leader meeting, our coordination meeting, it came up that they went to see her, but we also went to see her. And I just said, why are you sending the sisters out to see a media referral? And he was like, well, she's an older sister, so it'd be better if the sisters go out and see her. And I was like, I thought they were supposed to be doing less active work. And it turned into a big thing. I didn't intentionally make it a big thing. I didn't think, but it did. And Sister Scott got upset, and she said some things that kind of hurt me, and this will come back around. So I felt really bad that I made her feel that way. They were only in error for 6 weeks. But I felt bad that she had a bad experience being on a mini mission. The next 6 weeks, me and Elder Stanton both trained. And Elder Stanton, he trained Sean Waite, and I got Sam Webb. And Sam's another one that I haven't been able to be in contact with a lot. But I am in contact with his mom, which is good. I loved Elder Webb. I loved training. President Frederick told us that was probably the most important calling on a mission, was to be a trainer. And I took that responsibility really to heart, but I was only 6 months out, 7.5 months out when I trained Elder Webb, and I had no idea what I was doing. I still felt like I was being trained. So I was like, I don't even know what to do with this brand new missionary. Luckily, he was from Bristol, England, so he didn't really have to deal with the cultural differences. But there was a lot of times where me and Elder Webb saw miracles, I would say, just in funny little stupid things. Like one time we were just sitting in the church, and I was like, Elder Webb, do you have the phone on you? And he checks his pockets and he pulls the phone out and he's got it in his hand, and it starts ringing immediately. And it was the bishop. And he looked at me and he's like, how did you know it was going to ring? And I was just like, I just knew, Elder. I just knew. I'm your trainer. I know what's up, man. So he answered the phone, and we were doing a mission fast. And in Preach My Gospel, it talks about teaching families. And I said, this is great that we as missionaries teach lots of individuals and single people get baptized and things, but I'd love to baptize a family. I just would love to teach and baptize a whole family. And I always tried to invite the whole family to come in and learn the lessons, and never was very successful at that. And we were driving down the road one day, and I liked listening to talk tapes. I didn't really care for the music, and like Mormon Tabernacle Choir got old really fast. Never really cared about classical music, but listening to a talk from President Hinckley, and he's talking about eternal families, and he just said, I think that if we had the capacity to teach effectively this one doctrine, it would capture the interest of millions of husbands and wives who love each other and their children, but whose marriage is in effect only, quote, until death do you part. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, if I could just take that and make people understand that when they get married, they heard the words, as long as you both shall live, or until death do you part, that says that you're only married for this life. It's not an eternal marriage. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, we got to start using that when we're doing our door approaches, when we're talking to investigators. So I was like, Elder Webb, that's it. Straight from President Hinckley's mouth. I was like, let's get rid of our Book of Mormon pass along cards, get rid of the Finding Faith in Christ ones, get rid of all of the other ones, all of them, just keep the temple ones. And I was like, what we're going to do is just say, in our church, we teach that families are forever, not until death do you part, or as long as you both shall live. But people are married for this life and for all eternity. And I just knew that that was the way forward. And I was fired up to just start teaching families and finding families. And so, of course, we jump in. No luck. It's not working. So I'm wondering, what am I doing wrong here? And I've got a new missionary that's looking up to me like, what's going on? How come we're not finding families? And I was like, remembering my goal of 200. And so far I've got one. And I've been in the mission 7.5 months. So I was like, it'll happen, Elder. It'll just happen. So we had planned, there was a fast, I think, a mission fast for us to find more people to teach. And so our planners were full of people that we had plans to go teach. And we were nearing the end of our fast. We still had probably 4 or 5 hours left. And our appointment they were supposed to go to, we get to the door, no one's home. So we got skunked out of that one. So I says, let's call our next appointment and see if they can just move up an hour. So I called them and they're like, well, we're kind of thinking about it and we'd rather not meet with you guys. So skunked on appointment number 2. I can't remember what our third appointment was, but I was like, let's just drive out there. We didn't have a phone number, but they lived in Auken Lake, which is where Corey Stevenson lives. And we went out to chap their door to see if we could just meet with them early. Skunked on number 3. And I was like, man, we're fasting. I just heard this from President Hinckley. I felt the Spirit. I know this is what we're supposed to do. Elder Webb's looking at me, he's a brand new missionary. I'm supposed to be a good example. And I just said, Heavenly Father, this is you, man. I'll do whatever you want me to do right now. And I had no ideas. Like, there was no members that I could think of going to see. My mind was blank. So I just looked at Elder Webb and I said, let's chap this street real quick. We're already here. So we started chapping. House number 4, the 4th house. I pulled out Temple Pass Lawn card, chapped it. This lady answers, says, we're teaching about how families can be forever, or together forever, not just until death you part. Is that something that you'd be interested in? And she said, yeah, actually, I would be. So I says, well, can we come in and teach you right now? And she says, right now is not good, but I'd love to schedule a time for another night. And so I says, okay, how about tomorrow? So we scheduled an appointment for the next day. Golden. It was a lady named Allison Alon, and she had 3 kids, Shannon, Katie, and Sean. Her husband never really wanted to listen to any of the lessons, but we taught Allison Alon, Shannon, Katie, and Sean all the way through, and they all 4 got baptized one day, and me and Elder Webb got to get a picture with them, and it worked.
Wow.
And my whole mission, I just kept that. I had that saying, Elder Staten's alarm clock that you could record stuff on. I found one at what is it called? Poundland, where everything's just a pound. I found one of those and I took that and I recorded it so that I could hear it every single morning. That's why I've got it memorized. But like I just listened to that every single morning with Elder Webb. And we'd always say that because it's such a simple thing. In the church, we get into like a rote, like people say, time in all eternity. And people don't understand that. If you break it down and say, when you got married, it was till death do you part. That means when you die, that's it. It's bupkis. But if you think about it, in the church, we're married for this life and for eternity. That makes a huge difference, because if you love your spouse, why are you only going to want to be married for this life, you know? And that's one of the blessings of being a member of this church that you don't get anywhere else in any other Christian church and any other religion. It's only found here. So I love that. Elder Webb, I was with Elder Webb for 3 months. The next 6 weeks, we had Sister Powell and Sister Jagger come in. Jenny Powell. Come on, Jenny. Let's hear your podcast. She was a great missionary. Sister Jagger was a great missionary. I loved listening to hers. I loved hearing about her experiences. Glad she didn't say too much about me. So, thank you, Sister Jagger. Appreciate you. But yeah, it was different, because every 6 weeks it was just a different dynamic, and hard to get used to. My first time being a district leader to younger sisters. So always new experiences. Elder Webb was just way cool. Bristol, England's on the south. They're like farmers down there, and so he's always like singing. I can't remember how the song goes, but talking about his combine harvester and his tractor and all of this stuff in his Bristol accent. Just a really cool guy. And I think Elder Slade talked about him a little bit, but I don't know who else he served with. I don't know what areas he went to. And I'd really like to hear from him as well, Sam. So get on here, Sam, and let's hear about your mission, man. One thing about being an heir and gaining 3 stone is my suits didn't fit anymore. So I had to go to Tesco. What I'd do is go to Tesco and Asda, and they had the suit. Like, you could pick the right suit trousers that fit you, and then the suit coat that fit you as well. So I could find them that were good around the waist and long enough in the legs, but I could never find them long enough in the sleeve. So I just bought a new suit like every 6 weeks or something, and just wore it. And they were machine washable, so you just throw them in the washing machine. For the longest time, I was rocking Asda and Tesco suits, and so a lot of pictures, the sleeves are like all the way up here on my wrists, and it's just funny.
It's great.
So 6 months I was there. 6 months I was there in air, and I got the phone call that I was leaving and going to Edinburgh, and Bishop Gilardi and I cried, and he fed us breakfast that morning, sent me off on my way. And that's how much I loved that area. It was just so good, and the people were so wholesome and such a good example. There's a family there, the Ellimans. Brother Elliman wasn't a member. Sister Elliman was, I think, the Relief Society president. And I found a lot of success in going through the area books and checking on, previous investigators, dropped investigators, recent converts, less actives, and just trying by them and seeing if they wanted to meet with us. And Brother Elliman was one where missionaries had tried for years to get him baptized. And, we went in, had a couple DAs, did dinner appointments, and just got to get to know Martin Elliman. And he worked at B&Q, which is our Home Depot. And he had grandkids that he loved. And so you just talk about his family and what he liked to do. And before too long, it was comfortable enough that I could just say, Brother Elliman, let's get you baptized, man. You're pretty much a dry Mormon. Let's just do this and get it over with. And Bishop Gilardi would fill the font. I think you guys talked about it, like the heaters and the drains never worked out right. So if we could just fill the fonts, Bishop Gilardi did that. He was like, I'm not fixing the flipping water heater again. So like every month it was fill the font and invite everyone. And we would go into the baptismal font area, and he would say, anyone here want to get baptized? And there was always non-members, and we'd always have refreshments from Stobbs the Baker afterwards, and it was just freaking awesome. And one time I walked up to Martin Elliman, and I was just like, font's filled, man, and there's clothes in the closet. We can do this. And he was just like, Elder Ashton, you again, man. And he got to meet President Frederick one time, and he told President Frederick, he's like, that Elder Ashton, if anyone baptizes me, it's going to be Elder Ashton. And when I was leaving, or I can't remember if it was his birthday or something, but we dropped a card off at their house, and it just said, Dear Martin, get baptized, love Elder Ashton. And Sister Elliman told everyone in the ward how much that meant to him and how much it was funny and how much that they appreciated me and Elder Webb. And Brother Elliman did get baptized, not by me. It was after I left, but he did get baptized, and he was the Elders Quorum president shortly after because he was just a dry Mormon anyways. Love you, Brother Elliman. You're a good man. So
that's a cool story.
Yep. So our zone leaders there too was Brian Black and Joseph McLean. Brian Black was my leader pretty much most of my mission. Like, he was my zone leader pretty much from air until the end, till he went home. So Edinburgh, I go to Edinburgh. My companion is Elder Dallin Ray, and we were opening the Meadows too. So they had a new flat for us, and the heater never worked in that flat. And so we would just turn on the oven, and like each room is its own room, right? So we just turn on the oven and open the door, and then we close the door to the kitchen and just sit in there with the oven going so we could be warm. Because I'd been on my mission for about a year at that point. And it's hard to open an area. I mean, they gave us a blank binder, like an empty binder area book, and it was just like, good luck, guys. And they tried to give us an area and tried to give us a few of the files that were in the area book, and man, that was tough. But me and Elder Ray did really good together. I love Elder Ray. He was such a good companion. And I guess his trainer, I can't remember who it was, would say like, well, good night every single night. And so he would say that to me, and it was just fun. Just fun serving with Elder Ray. I wanted to get my driver's license, and because I'd been out for almost a year, I can't remember what the requirements were, if you had to do so much book time and then take a online test before you could do your driving test. So I got permission to do my online stuff at internet cafes, and Elder Ray would street contact right outside the window. And he found that Elder Ray could find anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I sucked. I can't GQ. I can't chap. Like, I was never good at that. If people wanted to argue with me or Bible bash, like, I'd be right there. And Elder Ray was so humble and just really good at caring about people, and people could feel that from Elder Ray. And Elder Ray could, I mean, every single person that he talked to was a new investigator. It seemed like he's just fantastic missionary. I will never be as good as missionary as Elder Ray is. But yeah, I took my driving test. I can't even remember who the zone leaders and the assistants were. It's funny serving in Edinburgh because you're right next to the mission home, but anytime you go to the mission home, they're like, get out of here, go work. You're not supposed to be here. It's like, man, we're out of copies of the Book of Mormon, bro. You know, I need more copies of the Book of Mormon. Get off my back. But yeah, so Elder Coford told me that going to Galashiels was easier to do the driving test than Edinburgh. So he's like, schedule it in Galashiels and I'll go down with you. So we didn't have a car in that area, but every Sunday I got to pick up investigators in the Corsa. And so I'd go pick up investigators before church, pick up other missionaries if need be, take them places. I was like the mission chauffeur. And when I took my test, I was in a Mariva, and I'd never driven a Mariva before. And Coford's in the back seat, and the driving instructor's on my left. And he's telling me where to go, what to do, everything. I'm in Galashiels, never been to that place in my life, and really nervous because it's like, this is expensive. You get one chance, and then you have to reschedule it and do the whole thing. And I just wanted to be done and over with. And I think that you had to pass everything to an extent, and if you failed one of the bigger maneuvers, it was like automatic fail. So he told me to do the parallel park, and like I said, I've never driven a Mariva before, and I'm backing up this Mariva, And Elder Coford is supposed to be a statue. And he said, if I hear him say anything or like look at you or anything like that, the test is over, you fail. So he can't help you out at all. So I'm backing up and I'm looking behind. And I guess I was getting really close to the curb in the car behind me, and Elder Coford was nervous. So he kind of just like nodded really slow. So I stopped and I was like, I hope this is good. And the instructor gets out and he walks around the car, and Elder Coford, while he's outside, Elder Coford's like, you are really close to that car behind us, way close. And he's like, I think you're really close to the curb too. And I was like, oh, crap, I failed it. Like, I just know I'm going to fail this test. So the instructor gets back in and he says, okay, we're going to go back to the driving office. And I says, yeah, that's it. I must have failed it. So he says, get out, signal, get out. We're going to drive back, go down this hill, and then make a left turn, and it'll take us back to the driving office. I'm not joking, you guys. I'm sitting there, and in my mind, I just know that a car's going to pull out in front of me. And it was like, this car is going to pull out in front of you, so be ready. Be ready for it. I was like, okay, there's not a car to be seen anywhere. I'm driving down the hill. All of a sudden, this car comes out, and it was like, I'm not going to say inches, but it was feet. But I was calm, cool, collected. I was paying attention. I knew it was coming. I felt that it was coming. I knew it was going to happen. So I didn't slam on the brakes, but I was able to navigate around and not hit this person. And it could have been a really bad accident. And the driving instructor's like, everyone okay? Is everyone okay? Yeah, we're fine. We're good. So we go back to the office and we get out. Elder Telford starts walking away, and the instructor looks at me and he's like, I'm going to tell you honest, you failed the parallel park. And so he's like, I should fail you. He says, but when we were coming down that hill, I knew that you were a good driver because that could have ended really bad. But you missed that guy, and everyone was safe, and the car stayed straight, and we didn't go out of control. So I know you're a good driver, so I'm going to pass you. And I was just like, that's the experience that I have with Heavenly Father. He doesn't just give me stuff. He's like, I'm going to give you a cool experience, and I'm going to make you work for it. So I don't even know if Elder Coford remembers that or knows, but yeah, he said, I know you're a good driver because you didn't hit that car. And so he passed me, and I got my license.
Yeah.
So
that was
hard.
That was the exact same experience for me. Like,
really,
my test, the instructor said, all right, slam on your brakes. And I eased in, and I was like, crap, I'm in trouble. And then I looked in my rear view mirror, and there's a lorry coming, and I just popped it and drove away. And he passed me because I didn't slow down traffic. And I was like,
oh yeah,
all right,
take that, guys.
Yeah, it's like, it was one of those moments where it was like, gosh, I should have just let go of the clutch and popped this thing. It screeched it to a halt. But I had that exact same experience. It's crazy.
Sweet. I've been driving grain trucks since I was a kid, man. It's like, you think I don't know how to drive this? I mean, everything's backwards, but I know how this is done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was fortunate that I was in car areas for, gosh, how many transfers do we have in a year? Like, is it 8 or something like that? And I think I was in a car area for 7 of my first 8 transfers before I had to take my test. And I was driving all the time. So Jack knows, he taught me how to drive. It was not an easy experience, but I got there.
Yep.
Love it.
That's crazy.
So cool.
Yep. It's a good experience to have in the holster for if you get called on to give a talk or something in Sacrament, spur of the moment. So
that's right.
Yep. Elder Holland, when he was there, he said, always have a prayer in your heart and a talk in your pocket. And when we met Elder Holland, I'll just jump to that real fast, but he got to shake all of our hands, and I shook his hand, and he told me, you look great, Elder. I was like, oh, thanks, Elder Holland, And he talked to us, and it was just amazing. Well, I had an opportunity to meet him again in Las Vegas, and all the bishops, elders, quorum presidents, and Relief Society presidents got to go and meet with him and do like a special one-on-one meeting. And I was like, this is my second time meeting Elder Holland. What can I tell him to just make him know how much I care about him and how much he means to me, because he's my favorite apostle, hands down. Bednar's starting to get up there, but Holland's my favorite for sure. And I was like, I'm just going to tell him that I love him. So I got up there, shook his hand. I was like, I love you, Elder Holland. And he said, you look great, President. So my ego is starting to get up. He told me I look great twice.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so in Edinburgh, Elder Peckham was my district leader, and he hadn't seen me since that night that we got our new trainers, and I'd gained 3 stone. So I jumped in the car, and Elder Peckham looked like he'd seen the Loch Ness Monster. He's just like, what have you done to yourself? And I was like, don't even, man. All right. It's like, I don't know how I got this way. People fed us, you know. All the successful missionaries gain weight, and you can quote me on that. I don't care. We all gain weight. So Elder Peckham was an awesome district leader. His companion was Donovan Oliver. I went on exchange with him. I love Donovan Oliver. I want to hear about your mission, bro. Like, let's hear about it. Elder Oliver is general authority status to me. Learned so much from Elder Oliver. Just way cool, collected. He was in the office. Elder Peckham was an office elder as the district leader. And it seems like between Elder Peckham, Elder Oliver, the APs and the zone leaders was like O'Brien, Stringfellow, Coford, Cassidy, all of those missionaries. It was just a party all the time. And so Elder Peckham probably has a bunch of stories. I've listened to Elder O'Brien's a few times, and I love Elder O'Brien's talking about Hammer Time and you know, kind of the things that he did while he was on his mission, and some things that he admitted about Hammer Time that just really ring true to me. And I just appreciate Elder O'Brien for his example. And I never really served around him very much. Like I said, we weren't really allowed in the mission home, so he probably wouldn't even know who I was, but definitely impacted my mission. We had a lot of members, Patty and William Liu. We went to Patty Liu's house a lot. There's a family called the Nunez family that helped us out a lot. And then Frances Spence and her family, Norm Campbell. They were always feeding us dinner, always so nice to us. One of our investigators, her name was Simone Donk. She was South African, and Elder Ray found her while I was doing my tests in the internet cafe, and we got to teach her all the way through from the first lesson to baptism. And she's fantastic. I know she struggled a little bit, but she's just a great example to me. There was a lady from Tanzania, Africa. Her name was Lucy Komanya, and she had two nieces named Lega and Dorca, and they were just so fun. They were 6 and 8. And Elder Stoddard, Anthony Stoddard, talked about Brian Ford, and he was blind. And when Lega and Dorca were around Brian, they would just ask him all the time about how he couldn't see and things like that. And Brian Ford was always just so good to them, and like never took it personal. And me and Brian Ford, we talked a lot, and Brian Ford told me once, I think we were GQing on the high street with Brian Ford, and he would just grab onto your elbow and you could just walk, and he would follow you along. And like if you were in a car, he would just feel the doorpost, the door frame of the car, and then get in. And one time he said to me, he's like, Elder Ashton, I like the way that you treat me. You don't treat me like I have a problem. And I was like, you're just like everyone else, Brian. You just can't see. Now get in the car. Let's go. You know? And Brian Ford's just a cool guy. And he had scriptures that were in Braille, that were in duffel bags that he would bring to church. And it was just a cool experience. Elder Waite, Sean Waite, was his companion. So it was good to be with him again, because last time I saw him was in Air. They trained William Forth. And I'd like to hear about Elder Forth's mission as well. So Elder Forth, let's hear about it, man. I see him on Facebook. He doesn't post a lot, but I'd love to hear about his mission and everything that he accomplished, because I just love Elder Forth. We had a media referral of a gentleman named Leslie McGuigan. And Elder Ray and I got to teach him all the way through to baptism. And he was just really cool with some of the families there in the ward. Part of the Hammer Time, here's a fun Hammer Time story for you. General Conference, I was in Edinburgh. My birthday is October 9th, so always around October, General Conference is my birthday. Sister Frederick says, Elder Ashton, your birthday's this week, right? And I said, yes, ma'am. She says, I'm going to make a really good lunch. And I had to have been dinner because you know how Sunday General Conference, the first is 9 o'clock, 9 to 11, and then like 12 to 1, you do priesthood session. And then, you know, you watch the Saturday afternoon and then the Sunday morning. She's like, I'm going to do lunch or dinner, whatever it was. And she's like, and I want you to be here, Elder. And I says, absolutely. She said, I'm making you something special for your birthday. So I says, all right. Well, our leaders told us that we needed to make sure we had investigators at General Conference. And they're like, you have to do whatever it takes to get an investigator to General Conference. So Elder Waite was my district leader at the time. And they said that we needed to go pick up one of our investigators and bring her to General Conference. But the investigator, we hadn't taught her about keeping the Sabbath day holy yet. And she was like, well, I need to do my shopping. And so somebody somewhere, I won't say who, but they agreed to that we would take her shopping on Sunday if she would come to General Conference. And so it was just like, you've got your driver's license, you have to go do this. And I was like, but that's wrong. This is totally wrong. And they're like, just do what your leaders say, Elder. Just do what your leaders say. You'll be blessed. And I was like, all right. So me and Elder Waite, we went and picked up our investigator. And Elder Waite was my zone leader or district leader. And the whole time we were just like, what in the heck are we doing? The only thing that we could say is that we're doing what our leaders told us. And a lot of times it was like, you know, this internally, it was a battle. It's like, I know this isn't right. I thought about driving away and leaving her there. And it was just like, that wouldn't be right either. It's like, what do I do? And it was an internal battle. So I can totally get where some missionaries came from, where they say they had a hard time with Hammer Time and things. But ultimately, I felt like if you just did what your leader said, you saw blessings from it, no matter how crazy it was. And now I've got a crazy story to tell at the end of it all. By the time we got her back, the first session of the Sunday morning session of conference, which was at 5:00 p.m., it was 6 p.m. By the time we got there, I totally missed Sister Frederick's special surprise lunch that she had for me. I think she got upset about that and maybe held a grudge, thought that I was kind of blowing her off or something. And I never had a chance to tell her what happened. So now you know, Sister Frederick, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Wasn't my fault. I was doing what my leader said. But me and Elder Ray, we served together for 3 months, and then I got to train again. And this time I got to train Elder Kevin Rose. And he was really cool. He had a twin that was serving in one of the England missions. And they got to go to the Preston, England MTC, like totally lame. Like, you know, if I had a twin, you'd want that to happen for sure. But if it happened to someone else, what a loser, huh? So I told Elder Rose the most important thing as a missionary, and this is something you never want to forget, is that if you ever have 2 dinner appointments in a night, you never tell the other member that you had another dinner appointment, because you wanted them to feel like they did something special for you. I mean, you've probably been in that predicament where you go to a member's house and they think they're feeding you. So they feed you and you're like, oh crap, we've got a dinner appointment in 30 minutes, you know?
Yes.
So I told him, I was like, you never tell the other member that you already had a dinner appointment. That's the most important thing I can teach you as a trainer. Well, around Christmas time, I think we went to the Lou's and they fed us, and it was unexpected. And it was a pretty good meal, a big meal. And then me and Elder Rose went to another family's that I can't remember, and they also fed us. And in the middle of that dinner appointment, Elder Coford calls up and was like, hey, come to the Nunez. I think it was actually around New Year's Eve. So he was like, come to the Nunez family. They're having a whole bunch of food. Like, we're going to stay up for New Year's Eve. It's going to be a party. You're going to love it. So I was like, oh man, we've already had 2 meals. We can't do 3. And we're like, but we couldn't say no to Elder Coford, who is our assistant, the assistant of the president. So we went to the Nunez, and Sister Nunez, she loaded me up the biggest plate of food you've ever seen. And I could already feel the other 2 meals making their way back up. And I said, there's no way. There's no room in this belly for any more food. So I started to eat, and I was eating slow. And she's like, Elder, eat up, Elder, eat more food. You're going to waste away to nothing. And I was like, it's good, Sister Nunez. This is great. And I'm eating it as I can. And it probably been 30 or 40 minutes, and I finished the plate. And she's like, get some more, Elder, get some more. And she starts dishing more on my plate. And I was like, I can't eat anymore. And she's like, that's not very much food. Get some more food, Elder. And I was like, I can't do it. And she's pressuring me. And I was just like, I'm sorry, Sister Nunez, but we actually had 2 other dinner appointments. I can't eat any more food. Like, this was life or death at that moment. I couldn't eat anymore. And she had the saddest look on her face, because it was just like that. She thought she was doing something special, and we'd already ate. And it was way awkward. I should have never said anything, but she was putting the pressure on, man. And Elder Rose was like, why did you say that when you told me not to say it? And I was like, at least now you know how awkward it is. we just left.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to apologize to Sister Nunez after, but Elder Rose, he was already ready to go. I didn't really need to train him at all. He had lived, I think, on the eastern United States, New Hampshire or something. He'd prepared to be a missionary. He didn't need me. In fact, in 4 weeks, I got moved up to Inverness. That's where Elder Cassidy and Coford took me up to Inverness. And me and Elder Rose ended up living in that apartment that Elder Hardy lived in with the dryer. So I got the electric dryer for 4 weeks. 4 weeks and 1 day, the transfer day, or the exchanges day. But Elder Rose, just a fantastic missionary. I also want to hear Kevin Rose. He's got to get on here and tell us what he's been up to and how his mission went, because he's another one that I saw him a couple of times and I served around him at the end, but I didn't get to see him for very much. So yeah, that's pretty much Edinburgh in a nutshell. Almost 4.5 months. Let's see. So in Inverness, my companion was Elder Mulford, Jake Mulford. And something cool about Jake Mulford is he was an extra in High School Musical. He played the tuba at the end.
Nice.
So all of the kids in the ward, I would just tell them he was in High School Musical, because High School Musical was big in 2007, man. So High School Musical was the thing. And like, the kids would always jump on him and be like, give us your autograph, Elder Mulford. So going to Inverness, I didn't know what to expect with Inverness. I'd heard a few stories about Inverness. Of course, Bert was our ward mission leader. Bert loved Elder Peacock and no one else. So he didn't really like me very much, and I already apologized to Brent Peacock. I just said, hey man, whatever he said, I'm sure he said that he didn't like me or I wasn't a good missionary, but I apologize. And I loved what Elder Peacock said about him. He said some really good things, and it was cool for him to be there at his funeral. And Bert Little is Bert Little, and there's no one like him in the whole world. And he would always say, I love you like an old cat. And I say that to my wife all the time, and my wife knows that it's an endearing saying, and so she lets it slide. I love you like an old cat.
Oh man.
He was going through some chemotherapy and cancer, and so we didn't get to see him a lot, and he was in a lot of pain and things like that. So towards the end of his life, and it was kind of sad to see him in that condition, but he was always as stalwart as he ever was. So at that point, I was the district leader again, and Elder Tobias Lukes and Aaron Heemer were in Elgin. But President Frederick told us, he said, just go do one district meeting per transfer. You don't need to do any more than that. So we drove out to Elgin once and had a district meeting with them. I collected their numbers, but I mean, ultimately they were their own entity. I didn't really need to check up on them or anything. That's how it started. We had a car. We had a Mariva up there. We were always getting harped on for going over miles. Chad Harrison, you can put his name down. I want to hear about his mission too. Just tag him up, man. Let's get a bunch of tags on these guys. Chad Harrison was there, and apparently they'd gone over miles. And so Sister Frederick, President Frederick, was just like, you guys have 1,200 miles. Stay under on your miles. Don't go over. So I told Elder Mulford, we're going to do this. 1,200 miles is hard, but we're going to do it. There was a crappy little garage that had bikes in it. So I said, we're going to bike. If we're in Inverness, we're going to bike to church, bike to investigators' houses. If you don't have fenders on your bike, and the back of your shirt and your suit jacket just gets covered in mud and water, like whose idea was it to ride bikes in Scotland? I'll tell you a fun story too. We were heading to an appointment with a member, and I really like snowmobiling, four-wheeling, dirt bikes, side-by-sides, going off-road, anything like that. I just love it. We're riding our bikes past, and there's a bike track with jumps on it that are easily as tall as me. And we had 5 minutes, and I was like, Elder Mulford, we have to. And Elder Mulford had only been out for 4 weeks, and he was in the same group as Elder Rose, so I was supposed to be training Elder Mulford, and it was totally wrong for me to do this, but I was just like, come on, man. I've never been on a bike with a bike track like this in Scotland anywhere. I was like, let's just go on it a couple of times. And so they had a big ramp that you could like launch down into the track. And of course it's raining and snowing, so it's muddy. And I was there in January. And so I rode the track a couple of times, caught some air on my bike. This bike was rickety. It was from the 80s probably. I hit the jump. Elder Mulford's like, I'm going to get my camera out. This is sweet. So Elder Mulford's taking video of me in my suit jacket and helmet on this like turquoise, white, and pink bike doing jumps. And the famous "one more time, Elder" was said. You never say that. So I launched down this and I hit the jump. And as soon as I landed, the forks on my bike bent up like this and just stopped that front wheel. And I went over the handlebars. I dislocated my shoulder. And I didn't know. I tried to play it off. So like I was going to raise my hands like, yeah, I did it. But this arm only went up halfway because my shoulder was messed up. It was jacked. And I like got instantly rebuked right then. It was like, you knew what you were supposed to be doing. You shouldn't have been doing this. It's against the rules. You knew better. You have a new missionary. And I just felt like this big. I just got rebuked by the Spirit so hardcore. And when we had our mission president interviews with President Frederick, he's like, is there anything that you need to tell me, Elder? You know, the famous question, like anything that you need to talk to me about? And I told him yes. And you should have seen the look on his face. Like, I don't know what he was expecting. But when I told him that I was disobedient and jumped my bike and dislocated my shoulder, he just kind of laughed at me and he's like, well, that's not so bad, Elder. And I was like, can you give me a blessing? Because I feel like I've offended the Spirit. So he gave me a blessing and it was really good. And for a while, Elder Mulford had to do up my top buttons and tie my tie because I couldn't even lift my arm high enough to do it. Sister Frederick said, there's really nothing you can do. You just kind of have to wait for it to get your movement back. Because I guess I dislocated it and popped right back in or something, but we still deal with the muscle problems. I forgot to say in air when we were playing football, someone kicked a football up real high, soccer ball. And I was like, I'm going to header this into the goal. Watch this. And I like jumped and hit the ball with my head. And I immediately started seeing Tweety birds. And I couldn't see, like my eyes kept going cross-eyed, and Elder Staten's like, you look messed up. And I was like, if we get back to the flat and I take a shower and a nap, I should be okay. So I've learned now that if you get a concussion, the last thing you want to do is fall asleep. That is the worst thing to do. But I took a shower and I took a nap and I woke up and I was like, I feel much better. So
Oh my
the
God.
blessings of being a missionary, I guess.
Golly.
So I could have died, but it was all good. Me and Elder Mulford, we did a lot of member missionary work. It was hard going, being on bikes. We had a meeting and they're like, how are you doing on your miles, Elder? And it was nearing the end of the month, I think, is when we told them our miles or something. And I was just like, we're under. Yeah, we're under our miles. We didn't go over our miles. And Elder Black, he was my zone leader. He's like, yeah, but you didn't baptize anyone either. So like, what was the point of keeping your miles down? And I was just like, dang it, he's right. Rode all these bikes for nothing. I was like, I'd rather just drive the car. So me and Elder Mulford drove the car a lot more. He was getting transferred out. I love serving with Elder Mulford. But he's animated, really animated. And it was a little bit hard for me to serve with him that way because he was just so eccentric and stuff like that. But I think that we made a really good companionship and people liked us together because we could kind of riff off of each other and things. And we just made a really good team, kind of the opposites attract and that kind of thing. I'll bring back Sister Scott. She was from Inverness. Chad Harrison, he was going home for something a couple weeks early. I don't know what it was for, school or something. But they're like, he told Sister Scott, Josie Scott, he says, yeah, I'm going home and Elder Ashton's coming in to take my spot. And Sister Scott's like, oh, don't joke about that. And he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, don't joke. I don't like Elder Ashton. Don't joke about that. You already know that. And apparently didn't know the story about the miscommunication that we had in air. And they told me that before I even saw Sister Scott. And so I knew that it was going to be kind of like a little tension. But Sister Scott, I would say, was our number one when I was there. She had obviously forgiven me for my stupidity as a young missionary. And I think that it's important that we remember, too, that all of us were only 19, 20, 21 years old. I mean, none of us had been leaders before. We didn't know what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I honestly believe that, some missionaries will say that, because what my leaders told me or because this decision that was made, so-and-so didn't get baptized. And this is just my opinion, but we didn't foil God's plan. Whatever happened on our mission was what God wanted to happen. And a lot of it was for us to learn. And as long as we were there thrusting in our sickle with our might and doing what we knew was right and listening to our leaders and President Frederick, I think that everything that happened was supposed to happen. And now, 20 years later, looking back at it, give some people a break. It's been 20 years. If it's hurt your feelings that bad, it's time to just remember that it was for you. That leader isn't all of a sudden the president now because they told you to baptize someone early, or they're not better off in life because of that. Just let's move on from that. I wouldn't consider myself a hammer time missionary. Maybe some do, but if there was ever anything that I told a missionary to do that they didn't feel good about, I just want to say I apologize. And if they felt like they should do something, I always tried to hear their side of the story and communicate and see what was the best thing to do. And I feel like anytime that we did that, it was always good as a leader and as a missionary myself, not being a leader. So I always appreciated leaders that would hear my side of it too. So anyways, that's all I really have to say about that. But what we were talking about? Sister Scott.
That's right.
Sister Scott would feed us. We would do service at her house. I'm surprised I haven't heard anyone talk about Peter Wilson in Inverness. Have you guys heard about Peter Wilson? Liz Wilson was his mom.
I think I remember Peter. I didn't serve there, but I do remember that name.
Do you know who Ainsley is?
Ainsley, yes.
Ainsley. The missionaries, it had to have started with Brent Peacock, man. Ainsley would call Peter every single week on Sunday, and Ainsley had to call Peter every week. And Ainsley was the missionaries. So the missionaries would have to call Peter and talk to him as Ainsley Harriet, who is a chef on TV.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about this until this moment.
Why did we have to do that, Brent? Or who was it? Who started that? I don't know, man. But
I remember.
it shifted to President Hinckley. So instead of Ainsley, President Hinckley would call and talk to Peter. And so we would just be like, Peter, are you behaving your mom? Is your room clean? Did you go to church today? Did you talk to people in church? Are you Christ-like? Now you could say whatever you wanted to Peter, and he would just be like, yes, I was. He'd always give you a huge hug. Well, when I was there, it was January 2008, and I can't remember around about when President Hinckley passed away, but I was like, that's it. We don't have to call Peter anymore because President Hinckley passed away. And I was like, we're out. We're done. We don't have to do this. So we were over at Sister Wilson's house, and I was like, sorry, Peter, but President Hinckley passed away today. So we're not going to, President Hinckley's not going to be able to call you anymore. He goes, who's the prophet now, Elder? Said President Monson. He's like, is President Monson going to call me now? And we're like, yeah, I guess he is. So that tradition continued.
Oh
and sometimes we would get off the phone with Peter as President Monson, and he'd be like, is Ainsley going to call me now? And then we'd just hand the phone to the companion, and Ainsley would have to talk to Peter. And sometimes Sister Wilson would call up and be like, hello, Elder Ashton. And we'd have been busy throughout the day teaching lessons or whatever. And she'd be like, could you put Ainsley on, please? We'd be like, yes, Sister Wilson.
We got to figure out. Thank you for bringing that up, because we got to figure out who started that. Because I remember that my entire time, because I served so many months of my mission in Aberdeen and the north of Scotland, and I heard that story many times. I did not have to participate because I didn't serve there, but I heard it from Peacock, and I'm sure I heard it from other people too. So whoever started it, send us a message and let us know, because that would be very, very fascinating to know how that got started.
And how many years it went on. I got to know too, because at the time it sucked, man. But looking back, those were some good times.
Yeah.
I love Peter so much. We set up a bunk bed in his room for him, and he asked us probably every 5 minutes, what are we doing, Elder? And we'd be like, we're setting up your bunk bed. In 5 minutes, what are we doing, Elder? We're setting up your bunk bed. So it's just good times.
Yeah.
So me and Elder Mulford, I love serving with Elder Mulford. Elder Johnson and Elder Halford were our zone leaders. I was the district leader. Elder Johnson came and hammered Elder Mulford one night, and Elder Mulford was like crying at the end. Not really, but he was just like, man, that was the worst. But I just talked to him and was just like, I was like, it's just part of being a missionary, man. You got to follow the rules. You got to be a good, obedient missionary. And he understood and was all good with it and stuff. We'd also go to Invergordon. We pretty much had the top third of Scotland. I don't know if it was Loch Ness that kind of like the river Ness that divided up the top third of Scotland. That was our whole area. There's no missionaries north of us at all.
Yeah.
So that was our whole area, but we had Invergordon. President Allison was there in Invergordon, told us, I want a bunch of Melchizedek priesthood holders. So we tried to teach men, really supportive of us. It was so cool to meet in an old museum. And anytime we were there, we got to bless and pass the sacrament, which was way cool. There was an old lady named Eveline Lowney, and we would go and we would pay for her electricity. You had to like go buy the card at the corner shop and then stick it in the machine. That culture shock right there, man. Like you have to prepay your electricity and then it just counts down. That had to have been hell to just see your electricity counting down as you're using it. Turn off the microwave. I need that later for when I'm brushing my teeth.
But, Jack and I had a flat that that was the case. He's
That's
like,
ridiculous.
we got to go to the post office. I'm like, what do you got to mail? He's like, no, I got to go re-up our electricity card. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Quit leaving the lights on.
Yeah, we studied in the dark a lot.
Yeah. That would be so crazy to live there like that. I don't know.
It's
But
different.
yeah, it is. But yeah, Eveline she'd always buy us dinner. And one of my favorite things to get from the Chippy was a deep fried pizza. They just fold it in half,
Oh
deep
yes,
fry it, with some brown sauce. Man, oh man, there is nothing like that in the States anywhere.
agreed. I had a
I
friend
want,
that went on a trip to London, and I said, if you don't get fish and chips, you got to get a battered pizza. And he goes,
I know,
what? I said,
Yeah.
yeah.
with some vinegar.
Oh baby, so
Yeah.
good.
When you hear about that from another missionary, you're like, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to try that. And they're like, no, serious, you got to.
Yeah,
And
so good.
the munchie boxes too. Did you guys say you'd ever had a munchie box or no?
That was over Paisley Way, right?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
one in Sterling. Elder Jensen got a munchie box for us a couple of times.
I never had one. I may have had a bite of one, but I didn't have one of my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Elder Lucas in his podcast said that he would never eat one of those because it's just terrible for your health. And then Elder Smith in his podcast was saying that Elder Lucas said that Elder Smith was uncultured. And I was like, in Elder Lucas's podcast, he said he'd never even done his own laundry until his mission. So he doesn't have anywhere to talk. Am I wrong or right? I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
And he hadn't had a munchie box either. Like that's culture to me, but
I guarantee you right now, Christian is going to message me about that. I guarantee it.
let's hear it, Christian.
Oh gosh. So good.
Okay. So I'm trying to be fast. I know I'm taking a lot of time. I'm sorry, but
You're good.
let's see. What can I skip out? Selena Peoples, I have to mention her. There's a lot of people that served in that area that would know Selena Peoples, and she was just a fantastic member there and would always go on joint teaches with us and would always try and share the gospel with her friends, and just a perfect example of a member missionary. Selena Peoples keeps in contact with me, wishing me happy birthday, Merry Christmas, happy anniversary, just checks up on me all the time. I feel bad that I'm not as good at getting a hold of her as well, but really good spiritual experiences with her. Let's see, Elder Mulford, we served together for 3 months and a couple of weeks since I went up there early. And so I was there from January until June. So I got to see the whole, in Inverness in January, the sun barely peaks out and then goes down in the afternoon, early afternoon. And then I was there in June when the sun comes up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, and then it doesn't go down until 10 or 11. And I tell people that, and it's like, oh yeah, the sun, like when the sun came up in the wintertime, it would kind of just skate across the horizon and then go down. And then in the summertime, it never really went down because it was always just a sunset really until it was daytime again, so that was really cool to be in an area like that. But yeah, Elder Mulford got the call to leave. I don't remember where he went. And then Elder Chris Lee was called to be my companion. And I would love to hear how Elder Lee's mission turned out. Elder Bauckham in his podcast, Chad Bauckham, said that Elder Lee wasn't too excited about coming up to Inverness. I know that. I will guarantee you, and as a second witness, say that Elder Lee was not happy to come to Inverness. But I'm sure within a couple of weeks, he loved it as much as I did. Elder Lee kind of had a certain way of doing things. He came from Edinburgh, and I think that's where he started his mission. Maybe you can correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong, but him being there with the assistants and the zone leaders and things, he was like, this is how everything should be done. And he kind of came up. He was a new missionary. I'd been out over a year, and he's telling me that I need to change how I'm doing some things. And I was just like, look, man, I'm the district leader. I appreciate your input. let's talk about it at planning meeting and companionship inventory, save it till then, but Elder Lee and I didn't say that we didn't get along, but I'd say that there was always tension between us for the first little bit. And I think I know the reason why, but I'm not going to say anything about it. It's up to him if he wants to say anything. But I was like, I feel like me and Elder Lee, because I would talk to him and ask him how home life was. And he was in belly flop contest. He taught me that you can breathe fire with powdered sugar. And like he had pictures of him like blowing fire. And I was like, I'm definitely going to try that when I get home. And I was like, you're a cool guy. So why are you so just uptight right now? And I tried getting along with him. And I was like, this just isn't working. And I'm desperate. I don't know. I tried being nice. I tried, talking to him about his life and being invested. And I really did care about our companionship. And I was like, something's got to give. And it was about April. So I'm like, okay, April Fool's is coming up. I've got an idea. So Elder Lee, it's on preparation day. April Fool's is on preparation day. So we're getting ready to leave to go email our families. And because we're on the right-hand side of the car, so is the key and the ignition. And I was driving. So we get in the car and I pretend like I'm turning the key, but it's not starting the car. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I think our battery's dead or something, Elder Lee. And he's like, oh, man. And I says, but this car's stick shift. And we've got a down slope out of the Inverness flat there. Like you'd kind of do a 90 to get into that flat. So I was like, Elder Lee, do you think that if we push this car down the hill, that we could just kind of, jump start it or just pop the clutch and start it? And he's like, oh, yeah, that should work. I was like, are you okay pushing? And he's like, yeah, I'll push. So he pushed me to the end, and then I turned the wheel so we can start going down the hill. And I'm just like, I hope he doesn't hate me for this, but this was premeditated, 100%. So I was like, push as fast as you can, Elder Lee. And he starts running. And as soon as he got to full speed, I hit the brakes right to the floor. And he just face planted into the back of the Mariva. Like I still have in my mind his face up against the glass, all smashed. And I just unrolled my window and I said, April Fool's, Elder Lee. And he comes and he walks and he sits and just like plops himself in the passenger seat. And he's a ginger. So his face was already red as can be. And I just looked at him and he looks at me and he's like, I'm going to get you back so bad, Elder Ashton. And from then on, our companionship was so good. Like he and I were good friends. We riffed off each other. Like we taught really well together. We saw success. There was like, me and Elder Mulford, we worked really hard. We chapped a lot. We did member missionary work, but we just weren't very successful in finding investigators. And after that happened with Elder Lee, I'm not saying that's what it was, but just me and Elder Lee getting along equaled success. And there was a lady in the ward, Christine Griffiths, her sister wasn't a member. We taught her and she got baptized. Up in Invergordon, there was a lady named May Littler. She had family, some grandkids that weren't baptized. And so we taught them. And Callum Waring, her grandson got baptized. Elder Lee baptized him. The font in Inverness is blue and it's in the floor of the chapel. I guess it's not anymore because didn't they knock that building down and build a new one?
They did, yeah.
That's a bummer because that building is cool. But the steps going down into the font were in the font. So anytime you baptize someone there, you had to beware of the steps. But Elder Lee was like, I'm going to make sure he gets baptized good. So he dunks him and he hits his head on the step. And Callum comes up and he's like, you hit my head on the step. So everyone knew. Everyone knew. And Elder Lee felt bad about it. But it's like, what can you do, But he'll never forget his baptism for sure. And then I'll just share this story real quick. Going through the area book, there was a lady, I think her name was like Elizabeth something. And I just felt like we should try by her up in Invergordon. And she didn't live too far from May Littler. So I was like, we'll give it a shot. So After church on a Sunday, we went to go contact this Elizabeth lady. She was like a dropped investigator that no missionaries had gone to see in a while. And so we knock on the door. This old lady answers, says, "Hey, we're looking for Elizabeth so-and-so." I can't remember what her last name is. And she's like, "Oh, she's no here no more. She passed away. I live here now." And I was like, "Oh, okay. We're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ. We're just sharing a message about how Jesus Christ died for our sins and his church has been restored to this earth through a prophet. Could we share this message with you?" She's like, "Oh, no, I'm no interested." Starts closing the door. I've never done this in my whole life on a door approach on my mission ever again or before then. I had to go to the bathroom and I said, "Do you mind if I use your toilet?" And it just came on like that. And it's like, I don't even really feel myself saying it. I was like, "Can I use your toilet?" And she's like, "Ah, yes." And so she invited us in and it was raining. She's like, "Oh, you're pure soaking. Come in, get warm. I'll give you some biscuits." And so I used her toilet real quick and we were in her living room and she poured us some diluting juice and some biscuits and stuff. And she was just talking to us like, what are you doing?" And we talked to her and told her, and I was like, "Well, we're already here. Do you mind if we just share our message real quick? It'll only take 30-40 minutes. And she's like, "On you go." So we started teaching her, and me and Elder Lee, everything that we said was just like spot on, everything that she needed to hear. And we talked about Joseph Smith and the restoration of the gospel and the first vision and how she was a child of God and that God loved her and knew who she was and wanted her to be happy. And we invited her to be baptized, and she had tears in her eyes. And she says, "My whole life, I've never been baptized." And she says, "Yes, I will be baptized." So in 2 weeks, Emily McPhillips was her name. 2 weeks, she was baptized, and she was just an amazing, amazing person. And we got to see, it was a miracle, the whole thing. She was going to shoo us away, but then I had to go to the bathroom, and there we were. And it was just like, that's how missionary work works. No matter what you plan or what you think is going to happen, Heavenly Father's got his ways of doing things. And she was baptized.
It's awesome.
Yep. So me and Elder Lee also had another gentleman that we were teaching, and Elder Halford and Elder Black were the zone leaders, and we had taught him a bunch of times. He'd been to church a million times. I know, was it Elder Hess that promised Brady Hess? It's his birthday today, by the way, September 6th. And
Happy birthday,
in his
Brady.
podcast, yep, love you, man. In his podcast, he said that he promised that guy that his team would win if he came to church. Remember that?
That's
Like,
right.
if you come to church, your team will win. Well, this guy, in coming to church, his car wouldn't start. And I just got the Spirit saying, like, his car wouldn't start. And I was like, if you keep trying, your car will start. I promise you that your car will start and that you'll make it to church. And we got to church and he wasn't there because his car never started. So I didn't have whatever mojo that Brady Hess had that could make that kind of stuff happen. But I tried, dang it. I tried. So
that's why Brady Hess is a bishop now.
Right. Yeah. So during that time, while we were teaching him, we'd gone through the baptismal questions with him. He was ready to be baptized. He had a date. Everything was set, good to go. Elder Halford and Elder Black drive in from Aberdeen to do the baptismal interview. We're outside playing football with some kids while he's inside the house getting the baptism interview done. And I just said to Elder Black, because of hammer time in the situation, I was like, does anyone ever fail baptism interviews anymore? And Elder Black was like, no, there's too much on the line.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so funny how he said that, just so serious. There's too much on the line, Elder. Well, Elder Halford comes out and he looks at us all and he says, he failed. And we're like, are you serious? It's like we taught him over and over and gone through the questions and all of this. How did he fail? And he says, I didn't even get past the first question. And that's, do you have a belief in God? And he said that he believed in God, but that he didn't really believe that there was a God. And so he was kind of hung up on that. And I was just like, I guess we have to go back to teaching him that kind of stuff, you know? And there is a lot on the line when it comes to that. And it looked bad on me and Elder Lee. Like, what are you guys doing? What have you been teaching? He doesn't even believe in God. That's the first principle that you're supposed to teach in the first lesson. God is our loving Heavenly Father. What the heck? Why do we drive all the way from Aberdeen for this? And I just told Elder Black, I was like, I don't know what's going on, man. We'll talk to him. We'll see what's going up or what's going on with him and what's up. And it turns out that guy had some issues, some really deep issues that he wasn't sharing with us. And it ultimately was a good thing that he didn't pass the interview, because it would have been really bad if we'd have baptized him and then this stuff came to light. So Elder Halford definitely had the spirit of discernment in that interview. And even though it wasn't what we wanted, I still to this day, I'm like, Elder Halford is like super spiritual Superman, because he knew what was up. So love Elder Halford for being such a good example. Me and Elder Lee had a good and successful 6 weeks, or sorry, 3 months. That last 6 weeks, we baptized a lot of people. It was awesome. A senior couple did go to Elgin. I forget what their name was. I think it was the Marshes as well, but I'm not 100% sure. President told me just get the top 5 key indicators from them. And then when I left, Elder Lee was the district leader now. And they had found out that I was only getting the top 5 instead of all the numbers. And they're like, what the heck are you doing? And I was like, that's what President told me to. So they're like, there was a lot more numbers we could have got. But the Marshes ended up baptizing a family. So it was just, we had 2 baptisms in a week, and then the Marshes had 3, I think. And so there were 5 baptisms just out of 2 sets of missionaries, and one was a senior couple. So it was just amazing, miraculous things that happened there.
Wow.
President called me up and said that I was going to be a zone leader in Dundee with Elder McCullers, and it was Elder McCullers' last 6 weeks. Brett McCullers didn't really, he was like in the twilight zone, man. He's like, I'm going home in 6 weeks. So I'd never been a zone leader before. I was banished to Inverness. A lot of missionaries didn't even know who I was. And everyone loved Elder McCullers. Everyone in the ward, Bishop Snee, loved Elder McCullers. Everyone in the ward, the May family. I love the May family. Lots of miracles happened with them. They would invite us over for dinner all the time. Brother May once shared his testimony, and it was the most spiritual experience I had on my mission, was hearing Brother May's testimony. And their family was just so awesome. Their daughter would make cake for our dinner appointments every time, so we could have a cake every time that we went there. Just so much love and support for us. And a lot of missionaries said in their podcast, some of the older ones, I think maybe Elder Hess said this too, but he said that in Dundee there wasn't any chapping allowed. Well, I never heard that, so I chapped in Dundee. Me and Elder McCullers did. But some things that Elder McCullers liked to do that I thought was funny is if there was a girl walking on the sidewalk, it didn't matter what she looked like. He would just open the window and say, hey, sweetheart, and like kind of cover his badge. So I was like, I'm going to get him. So next time we were driving and he yelled, hey, sweetheart, I slammed on the brakes and pulled over. He's like, what are you doing, man? Keep driving. What are you doing? And I was like, talk to her. I was like, invite her to church. And he's like, no, keep driving. It was so funny. But Elder McCullers, I learned so much from him. Everyone in the ward loved him, like I said. Bishop Snee, his wife's, I guess it was his father-in-law, his wife's dad, Alfie, he was so cool. Just a cool old Scottish guy. And Elder McCullers was going to be a dentist, or is a dentist, I don't know. But he was telling Alfie, who is Sister Snee's dad, that it would take 8 years or 10 years to be a dentist or something. He's like, what? You'll be getting your pension by the time you get out of school because you'll be that old. Just a funny old guy. Scott Snee left on his mission while I was there in Dundee. We worked a lot with Craig Snee and his wife Dominique. the McGlashans in that ward, the Hands, Paul Han, tons of missionaries in Dundee. So they would do breakfast for us all and just have 10 missionaries over for breakfast. The Demeches, the McPhees, the Sloans, just tons of things happening. Drew Allen, he didn't talk about this in his podcast, but he was cutting his hair once and the guard came off and he shaved himself bald all the way on the top of his head. So he was like using product to fill in his hair. Me and Elder McCullers, there wasn't a lot happening in the zone leader areas because all of the leaders are kind of focusing more on helping the missionaries, and so their areas were suffering a little bit, didn't have very many investigators, and so we were trying to build our teaching pool. And we had chapped on a door and we were teaching a family, which is what I love. And we had this lesson that just went so well, like everything was falling into place. Me and Elder McCullers were teaching so perfectly, and we would teach for understanding. So when you're teaching, God is our loving Heavenly Father, He wants to talk to us. He gives us prophets. He's always had a prophet so that He can talk to us. We can talk with Him through prayer, but ultimately a prophet's on the earth. Talk about the great apostasy where there's not a prophet. Now we've got Joseph Smith. And the father of the family is like, oh man, if only there was a prophet on the earth today. And we're just like, bro, check this out. And we told him about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, and they took a Book of Mormon and they were so happy to read it as a family. And me and Elder McCullers walk out of that and we're just like, what happened? I think that's the only time that I ever was let in to teach an appointment and actually taught a lesson the whole time. And it was just golden. Everything worked out so perfect. And we're like, this family's going to get baptized. We know it. And so we set an appointment for the next day and we were going to come teach them the second lesson and gave them some things to read in the Book of Mormon. And we called them up just to make sure that they were good for the appointment that night. And they're like, actually, we'd rather not. So no thanks. Nice to see you guys, but no thanks. We're like, dang it. So just shows that, it's not always us that gets to decide. But Elder McCullers went home, and he was a good example to me of what a zone leader should be. And he was always really caring to missionaries and always talked with missionaries, and a lot of the missionaries were friends with him. Elder Van Leuven, Justin Van Leuven, was called in to be my companion. And as everyone else has said, Elder Van Leuven was pretty eccentric, which is good, and also can be crazy. But he was a great missionary, and we had good times. We've got videos of us chapping in the rain, and we're just soaked all the way through to the bone. And both of us have big smiles on our faces because we're just loving life. And the zone was successful, and like the Bingham Terrace building in Dundee got broke into. While we were there, they broke the windows that were on top of the chapel and fell in, I guess, to the building and stole a bunch of stuff, and it was just nuts. But me and Elder Van Leuven, we were pretty in sync as far as what we wanted to achieve as the zone. And I had a dream one night. We were getting about 35 investigators at church in the zone. And I had a dream one night. It was just a silly dream that I was reporting that we had 50 investigators at church in the zone. And I told Elder Van Leuven, I was like, I guess that's revelation. I think this is doable, so let's do it. And so me and Elder Van Leuven pushed for 50 investigators at church. And we're always just like, ask everyone to come to church, invite everyone that you see, tell everyone, let's get 50 at church. And the whole zone was on board. And it never happened while I was there. But it was worth a shot. So it was good. Elder Waylon Grantham, he was somebody that I went to high school with. He was a year younger than me. He came into the mission. Elder Paul Burnett was my aunt's cousin. So my aunt was like, oh, my cousin's coming. You gotta see if you can get with him. And I never really served around him, but it was just cool to have people there that you knew. Elder Slade in Brodie Ferry talked about his new missionary that was struggling, and President Frederick called me up a bunch to go spend time with his new missionary. And it's just different being a leader, as Elder Hardy was talking about. Like, you have responsibilities that you don't really know what to do. You're just a kid, then you have to rely on the Spirit, and going on exchanges with the missionary that was struggling and wanted to go home to say the right things or to do the right things to make them feel like they could do this and they could be a good missionary. Like, he'd never get a chance doing that if you're not a zone leader. And that was a lot of pressure. President would call me up and talk to me for, 15, 20 minutes. And then I would go on the exchanges, and then I'd call and talk with President Frederick about how it went, and just to be that connected with President Frederick and feel how much love he had for this missionary that was just brand new and hadn't really done anything yet. He'd only been out for a few weeks, but President Frederick just had so much care for this new missionary, and for Elder Slade too, for everything that Elder Slade went through as well, and hoping that this missionary would stay and ultimately went home. But it was nobody's fault. He has his agency to choose, but we tried so hard, and that was something that I think that we all grew together in doing. But yeah, ultimately serving in Dundee was a huge blessing for me, and I can never thank the members there enough, especially the May family. They just mean so much to me, and I keep in contact with them too. But me and Elder Van Leuven one night, like a week and a half before moves, we're just chilling in the flat doing our planning for the next day, and we get a call from President Frederick, and it's like, oh crap, what's going on now? And President Frederick said, Elder Ashton, I want you to be my next assistant. And the first thing I said to President Frederick was, are you sure, President? And he said, yes, of course I'm sure, Elder. Pack your bags. You're coming down in the morning. And I was like, that was a really dumb question to ask the mission president. So Elder Van Leuven was like, you're going to Edinburgh, Elder Ashton. And I was just like, what am I going to do? So I loaded up all my stuff, and Elder Rose was there in Dundee. He was the one of the district leaders, and his companion was can't believe I'm forgetting his name, the Italian, Marcone, Elder Marcone, Alberto Marcone. And they're like, hey, we called him up and said, Elder Van Leuven's going to have to spend some time with you. And we go drop off Elder Van Leuven. Elder Rose is like, are you heading down to Edinburgh, Elder Ashton? And I was like, be quiet, Elder Rose. But at our district meeting that morning, I wrote everyone's name on the board because I knew that I was going to Edinburgh. And I just started putting stars by all their names. And they're like, does that mean we're moving? They knew moves were coming up, and so I would just look at them and put a star on their name, and it was just funny to do that to the missionaries that were in their zone. But let's see. I went to serve with Elder Johnson, Jeremiah Johnson, and that was really cool to serve with somebody who was in my group. And I'd always wanted to serve with somebody from my group. Elder Johnson, Elder Peckham got to serve together when we were young missionaries, and I was always so jealous and thought that it would be way cool if I could serve with Elder Gardner. But that never happened. But I did get to serve with Elder Johnson. Elder Halford was there for a few days with us. And being an assistant is such a, it's not missionary work anymore. Like, we didn't really have time to do missionary work, really. It was working with the missionaries. And we could go meet with members and things and try and knock doors and stuff. But if President needed us or another missionary needed us, we had to drop what we were doing and be there. And that was an interesting and cool experience. I got to hike Pratt's Hill with brand new missionaries. And I can't remember who it was, maybe Elder Kane, David Kane, was talking about how he was saying, like, these guys are really strict, and then we're like sliding down the hill. Well, the story behind that is I lent my trousers out to Elder David Larson, and he didn't have any preparation day clothes like I didn't. And so I was just wearing my old suit pants, and they were kind of tight, and it was raining and windy, and it sucked for all of us, and we're just chilled to the bone. And I was like, I'm going to see if I can slide down this hill because the grass is like 2 feet long. And I just took off running down the hill, and I swear I slid like 100 feet. And then all these other missionaries are just sliding down the hill, and we're just looking at President Frederick like, is this okay? Are you okay with this, President? And he seemed to be fine with it. But something that I asked Elder McCullers, I'll try and wrap this up quick, but I asked Elder McCullers, I was like, what even is hammer time? Because every missionary I feel like has a different meaning to hammer time. And for me, if it was in its perfect state, I would say hammer time was just helping missionaries to be obedient, to preach my gospel, the white handbook, to make sure that we were always doing what we were supposed to be doing. And I know that there was a lot of micromanaging and hypocrisy and stuff that went on, but I never, like I said, I never intentionally did anything like that. But there was definitely a need to be obedient. We had a new missionary come in that had, the mud flaps that have naked ladies on them. He had naked lady cufflinks and a pink tie, and then like a fuzzy scripture case. We're just like, sorry, elder, all that stuff you can't have. And it's like things that you would think is obvious, and it just takes someone to say, like, you can't have that. It draws too much attention. You're supposed to be a servant of Jesus Christ, and if you have that kind of stuff, it takes away from that. So I mean, that can ruffle some feathers. I know that Elder Kane talked about bringing a guitar, and I don't really want to call him out on it, but President Frederick didn't tell everyone in the mission about that. It was just me and Elder Johnson, and President Frederick was good at letting the missionaries kind of be in charge. And so he's just like, whatever you elders think and whatever you want to do, I'll back you 100%. And so it was me and Elder Johnson that just said, having a guitar wouldn't be a terrible thing, if you wanted to play on preparation day, and he always kept it to just preparation day. That wouldn't be a terrible thing, but there's a lot more better things that you could be doing than playing the guitar. And then to hear Elder Kane talk about how much that meant to him, we didn't know that, we were just making the best decision that we could. So I hate to call him out, but I really am impressed with Elder Kane and his music and stuff. And I'm like his number one fan as well. So keep it up, David. Appreciate it. I'm glad that you didn't lose your talent of playing the guitar because of myself and Elder Johnson's decision. So glad that we didn't ruin that. But I'll share a couple quick stories. I kind of feel bad that the assistants that were on before didn't really talk about what it was like to be an assistant, to be involved with moves, and to put new missionaries with trainers and things like that. Because we'd hike Pratt's Hill, in the morning with new missionaries, and then we'd hike Pratt's Hill with the old missionaries going home. And it was such a different experience. To see greenie missionaries with all this excitement, and then to see the missionaries that were going home and how humble they were, and the things that they'd done, just reflecting back in their minds, it was really spiritual to be with multiple sets of missionaries that were going home. To do moves, some missionaries would be like, oh, they're just leaving me in this spot because they don't care about me, or they're putting me with this missionary because they don't like me or whatever. But when you'd sit down with President Frederick and pray and say, please give us the Spirit to help us to guide us in the where to put these missionaries, like there was never a doubt in our minds when we were done with moves that this is exactly what Heavenly Father wanted. And it's just like when we got called to go to Scotland. I know that the apostles and the first presidency, when they made those calls, I know that it was, we went where we were supposed to go. Every area that we served in was every area that we were supposed to be in. There was no mistakes. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was, trying to stick you with something. Everything was for you as a missionary. And I firmly believe that. And I just know it. Being involved in the moves, there's nothing that can explain anything different than what that was. And, there would even be times where I joked around that, there was one missionary that was really hot-headed and a little prideful, and then another missionary that was a little hard to work with. And I says, maybe we should put them together, President. And all three of us laughed. And then the Spirit just descended on us and was like, that's what Heavenly Father wants. And all of us stopped dead in our tracks and was just like, it's so it is. And those two missionaries got along really well and were the perfect yin and yang. And it was funny to see the successes that they had, and just know that us three in that room joked about it, and then it just worked out so perfect. And to be an assistant was an experience that you can't have an experience like that in any other part of the mission. And to be so close to President Frederick. President Frederick had the apple cider drink. Can't remember if anyone talked about that or not.
It's been mentioned.
Pepper. Yeah. And in order to be an assistant, you had to drink that whole thing the first night. And it was just like, bottoms up, elder. And you just had to drink that thing. It's like, I don't know why you did it every night, but it had some health benefits, I guess. So Elder Johnson, outstanding missionary, was always in leadership. He knew what was up. We both knew that we only had 3 months left, and then we were both going to get moved. And so I asked President if I could speak with him in private. And I just said, President, I know that it's coming down to, me and Elder Johnson going home. And I said, Elder Johnson's a much better leader than I am. I just want to say that I think that it would be better if Elder Johnson stays as the assistant, and I can do whatever you want. I'll train, or you can send me to Glasgow, because I never served in Glasgow at all except for Pollock. But I was like, I'll do whatever you want, President. And he just looked at me and he's like, thanks, Elder. And I told Elder Johnson that I said that, and apparently Elder Johnson said the same thing. Like, Elder Ashton's a better leader than I am. Leave Elder Ashton in. But Elder Johnson talked about us going to the tattoo, and it'd be like 11 o'clock at night, and we'd be running errands for President Frederick, or getting ready for a zone conference, or picking up missionaries, or going and spending time with missionaries that were struggling. And we saw miracles doing that as well. President Frederick went to Germany for a mission president seminar, him and Sister Frederick, and it was Elder Johnson's birthday while he was gone. And I was like, man, we own this mission. Like, we're in charge. This is ours while President's gone. And he told us, like, this is yours. Don't mess it up, elders. And you guys are in charge. Well, we went into it really prideful, and we're like, this is going to be cool. President's going to be gone for a couple of days. Well, everything just fell apart. Some sisters had an investigator that got murdered. Like, members got really mad at some missionaries, and we were getting phone calls left and right. And I was like, I just want President Frederick back. But that was a good learning experience. A lot of good members going back to Edinburgh that I didn't get to work with previously: the Mansons, the Mateers, the Gaboynes, Mike Mackay. Just awesome. Brother Mackay ended up giving Elder Halford 20 pounds to take a girl out on a date when he got home. Elder Halford was so funny. He's like a little boy, like running around because he was going home, being silly. Just really cool, good example of a missionary too. When he went home, Haymarket, I might get this backwards, but I think Haymarket was flooded. And so he just walked over to Waverly and took a train from Waverly to go home. But he didn't have a cell phone. He didn't tell anyone. And so Elder Halford's dad was calling up and was like, where is my son? And we're like, we don't know. He doesn't have a phone. You're going to have to wait for him to call. And I had to talk to Elder Halford's dad like every 2 hours. And I was just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. But Elder Halford did make it home, and he's alive and well. But I loved Elder Halford's. I wish he talked a little bit more about his mission. But let's see. I'm going to skip. Elder Johnson knows that I loved serving with him, so I don't need to say that. My last companion as an assistant was Elder Paternoster. And Elder Jeremiah Johnson got to serve with Elder Mulford as the Edinburgh zone leader. And so that was cool for them to get to serve together. But honestly, I don't remember a lot with Elder Paternoster. I just know that we were busy. Elder Paternoster's English, and he was like always calm and cool, collected, always had the right thing to say. He never just blurted anything out. Like, if you said anything, he'd stop and think before he said anything, and everything they said was always really profound and wise. I know that stories have been told about, I think it was Elder Day that talked about Elder Van Leuven. We had to go pick up Elder Van Leuven and bring him to Edinburgh. And he said that he was, walked out and we were behind him and it looked like we were his bodyguards or something. And I didn't even remember that. Like, it meant nothing to me, but it's funny to hear it from Elder Dave. But Hammer Time, the micromanaging and stuff, Elder Johnson talked about it with Elder Matt Fissler, that, Hammer Time was over and we needed to let the missionaries do a little bit more of their own, receive some of their own revelation. And some of the zone leaders, I won't tell you who, but like there was a lot of sickness going around. Elders were losing their hair, hemorrhoids, stomach ulcers, just getting stressed out. And I would just go put my arm around them and be like, Elder, you're taking this way too serious. Like, yeah, this is serious stuff, but lighten up. Like, this is the good news. The gospel means the good news. You can't be sharing the good news if you've got hemorrhoids and stomach ulcers and you're losing your hair.
Yeah,
so I would just say, I was like, anything I can do to make this better. Like, I was trying to take off some of the stress. I didn't want anyone to feel like they were getting micromanaged. And so we would kind of step back, but because of that, the numbers would suffer a little bit. And I know one night I was collecting numbers on a Sunday night, and it was the worst numbers we'd received in such a long time. And President Frederick was sitting right next to me, and nobody will know what it's like to jot down the lowest numbers that we've had in years, couple of years at least, and have President Frederick sitting right next to you. And I just gave the paper to President Frederick, and he'd listen to me on the phone with all the zone leaders. And I gave him the numbers, and President Frederick just looked at the numbers and looked at me and just turned around and walked down the stairs. That is disappointment right there.
Oh, man.
But I feel like he still loves me because he did come to me and my wife's wedding ceremony in the temple. So I appreciate President and Sister Frederick for that. Thank you for forgiving me, President. But yeah, the end of my mission, we were busy doing zone conferences and things like that. I know zone conference, I'd always get fired up and want to just do more as a missionary. Me and Elder Paternoster had a really good skill that we had taught. And I walk out, there's 4 missionaries at the bus stop, and this lady pushing a pram just walks right past, and none of them stopped her. And I was like, come on, elders. So I ran outside, stopped her, talked to her about the church, and said, we're right here at the Glasgow building, at the church building, and you can come here on Sunday and have a meeting and stuff. And the Hammer Time stuff I know gets a bad rap, and if it was done right, I honestly feel like it was good for the missionaries to be accountable, and it was always good for me. There are some things that sucked, and Elder Waite laughs at me because sometimes I'd go into the bedroom and I'd scream in a pillow because it's just a lot to ask. But ultimately, it turned out really good. I got to serve and do exchanges with Ryan Blake, Tyson Bear, Matt Fissler. We talked about him a little bit. And yeah, I just had a great time in Scotland. And on the night that it was my turn to go hike up Pratt's Hill, I definitely didn't reach my goal of 200, not even close. But I got to the top of Pratt's Hill, and I just looked out over Edinburgh and saw the lights and everything, and it was dark. And I just felt so blessed to have been in Scotland. And everything that happened just kind of rushed over me. And, the minutes felt like hours, and the time that we were up there felt like it just went by really fast. But I just felt the love that Heavenly Father has for the people of Scotland and for the missionaries that I served with and around, and their families and their extended families. And you think about all the sacrifices that took place. In the movie Saving Private Ryan, I know it's rated R, but it's only rated 18 or 17, NC 17 in England, right? I saw it on TV, edited, so don't judge me. But at the end, Tom Hanks, Captain Miller, when he looks up at Private Ryan, he just says to him, earn this, earn it. And that's kind of how I felt at the end of my mission on Pratt's Hill. Like, all of the things that I was able to be a part of, and all of the sacrifices that all of these missionaries made, these members in all of these cities that I served in, the sacrifices that they made, the families of my companions, the wards of my companions, wherever they came from, all of that, it was just like, this was all for you, really. If you can take your mission and internalize it and make it mean something to you and earn that, I think that's what Heavenly Father wants us to do with our missions. And I think about my mission every single day, even though Elder Zach Clark doesn't believe that that's even possible. I'll tell him it's possible. I think about my mission at least 5 times a day. And with this podcast going on and hearing other people in the podcast, I always think about my mission and people that I served with and around, and I'm not worthy of it. I'm definitely not worthy of all the miracles that I saw in my mission, but all the blessings that I've received because of my mission. I'm not worthy of it, but I'm eternally grateful to my Father in heaven. And I'm eternally grateful to all of my companions too. And for President and Sister Frederick, there's nothing that I can do to pay that back or to make any kind of amends or to to be even or on par with all of that. And I just thank my Heavenly Father daily that I even got to step foot in Scotland for one day and to feel the blessings of missionary work there. So I just really appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys for doing this. It's life-changing. And I feel the Spirit almost every single time that I listen to these podcasts. There's one, Jack, that I think you were with Elder Parmenter talking about your missions. And at the end, you were just like, I love you, man. And he goes, I love you too, Jack. And I could just feel it. It was like the Spirit witnessed to me that was true. And it was like, what a stupid thing for the Spirit to witness something like that. But it's just like, I just knew it. Like, you guys, you must have been good companions, and you loved each other, and you went through a lot, and it meant a lot. And that's how it feels. It's just like the mission. You guys have said it, whether you're still active in the church or whether you think about your mission or whether you hated Hammer Time and whether you can't get over it, you can't. If you think about all the things that happened, it was for you. And if you internalize it and you make that a part of who you are, you'll see that more and more in your life. If you put it on a back shelf or a back burner, you'll never understand everything that Heavenly Father did for us. So obviously that's how I feel about it. Some other people might not feel the same, but I know that I was called to be a missionary in Scotland, and that by being obedient, that I received all the blessings that Heavenly Father asked for me. I have no regrets. I wish I could have done more, but I wouldn't say that anything was wrong. I wouldn't say that I did anything wrong. I feel like I hope that I'm forgiven if I offended anyone in my leadership. I hope that I can be forgiven, but I just know that Heavenly Father made our missions for us. And so I just say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Wow.
That was beautiful.
Thanks. That was on the spot too, guys.
I don't have any words. They've gone away. Thank you so much, Demeron. That was incredible. I
hope it was worth sitting through the 3 hours.
I second what you said, though. Like, you can't set aside the time, the effort, the blood, the sweat, the tears that we all experienced while serving the people in Scotland. And we were all called there for a reason. And we were all put in the places where we were put for a reason.
Yep.
And whether we enjoyed those moments or not, it was a part of our existence and our experience and our learning that is just a small clip of our existence here on earth that we're here to learn. And so I really appreciate the words that you shared, the way that you eloquently shared your experience. And I mean, I don't know what else to say. So thank you.
Yeah. One more thing that I want to add. One of the new missionaries that came in was Elder Shenton's little brother, Oliver Shenton.
Yeah.
And he just messaged me today. He was a brand new missionary when I was leaving, going home. He was just brand new missionary, but he served in the office with us for a little bit. He messaged me today and he said, "Hey buddy, I hope you're doing good. It's been a while. I miss you." And that made my whole day. And this podcast has made more of this kind of stuff happen. And I told him, I was like, "Dude, I'm going to be on the podcast tonight."
Sweet.
I agree. Jack and I have talked about it so many times that the camaraderie that we have is without a doubt easily the best camaraderie that a mission could have, because there
Definitely.
were so few of us there at any single time, and we didn't have very much overlap, you and I, because you're in Sterling and I missed you.
Yep.
But the ability to talk about people, places, experiences brings out that incredible, powerful spirit that came from being in Scotland. There's no other feeling like it. And that's why Jack and I just love these conversations. There's so much power in them. And like you said, the connections, the ability to talk with our brothers and sisters from Scotland again, who maybe we've lost touch with or haven't been as good of being in touch with over the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years or whatever. It's come out through these incredible conversations we're having. So this doesn't happen without people like yourself, Demeron, who participate and are willing to share, and clearly took the time to prepare yourself for this with the
Maybe
names that
too
you
much.
shared and I told you I was taking notes. Check this out.
Yeah.
This is my page of names and things that I wrote down. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm tagging everybody because you know that there are people that are listening to this that we still want to hear from.
Yep.
And it's just incredible. So
yeah,
we really appreciate you. We love you. And we know that you'll continue to be an advocate for the podcast for us moving forward. Like I said, we love referrals. Keep them coming.
I'm number one.
You're definitely number one.
Yeah.
Well,
number one fan.
Demeron, thanks again for your time tonight. We'll say cheerio to you and we'll be in touch very soon. All right.
Thanks, elders.
All right. Cheerio, brother. Love you.
Bye. Love you too.
Bye.